It had been 1 month since the start of the official beta test for the new VRMMORPG, World of Yggdrasia. The game came packaged with the newest VR system and had become the talk of the town for its incredible realism. It was unlike any VR games before. The game had just concluded its first official event, Subdue the Berserkers. Criticism had been mixed, in part due to the overly inconsistent strength of the event monsters, their too real, too terrifying behaviors, and other reasons. But in general, player responses were positive. And once the developers released an official video showcasing some of the best battles of the event, the internet was immediately abuzz with impatient people asking for the official game release. Ever since the beta test began, the 10,000 chosen testers had been enjoying their travels of the lands and busying themselves with sharing information and playful whinings on the VR chat rooms. And today was no different. Y'all thought being able to spawn in any time zone was convenient, right? Yeah, I thought so too. And then it turned out that if you mostly game at night and choose to spawn in the morning, like me, you're gonna get some really shitty jet lag. I've been seeing sunlight all day. I know, right? Then I got way too hooked in this game and logged in the morning too, but then it's night in game and there's nothing happening in town. Don't the bigger cities have the red light districts? The place is a bit dangerous, but at least you can pass the night there. I'm actually not 18 yet, so I've been playing the all ages version. Oh, whoops. Never mind, then. Hey, there are kids here. Stop it with the topics. Got it, sorry. So this also ties into the time zone thing. But did you know you can teleport to a distant temple and register your new spawn there? Only once though, and you can't bring anything besides event items. Hey, did you see the new trailer? It looks amazing. Yeah, they used actual scenes from the event monster fights, right? Only one spawned in my area, and when I logged in it's already dead. Apparently a few of them could respawn several times, though they seemed to stop after 3 times killing them. And those respawnable ones were generally pretty strong. I heard quite a lot of the rank 2 parties died to them. By the way, how high do the ranks? Actually, skill level is the right word, isn't it? So how high can they get? I think the devs said it's 10. But both the current version and the official release are only going to get to 5, apparently. Yeah, if you take combat skill level 5 to be an expert, then you're going to see rank 6 only with top class knights, probably. First time I've seen a game with players weaker than NPCs. That's a realism-oriented game for you. We'll probably be seeing those top-class knights all over the town in a few years, though. Man, I wish there was another monster-killing event. This time's reward was a year pass for the airship, right? Yeah, it's super convenient for traveling and changing spawn points. A pity the normal price is pretty much equal to buying a mansion. So only around 500 people got one, right? Personally, I don't really care. The country I picked is already so huge I'm not even sure I can explore all of it. Besides, those bosses I saw in the trailer looked hella scary. Seriously, there's gotta be a limit to realism. I mean, the ones in the trailer were the 10 most powerful monsters, I think. They all got a lot of player kills under their belts before they're dead. I don't think the event monsters are all like that, but I have to agree they were fucking crazy. Really have to wonder what kind of AI the devs were using. Crazy is right. I could actually feel the insanity. Maybe they recruited a horror game dev from somewhere else. Oh yeah, did you hear? The devs tweeted that the official release may have monster avatars to choose from. For real? Then does that mean I can play as something like the trailer bosses? What are they going to do about the disconnection? I read about this 120-kilo-old dude who only changed his body type and age, and he still had to deal with tons of problems before he could get used to it. The tweet didn't go into much details, only that the parts that cause the disconnection are going to be automated. So I can have 2 heads or turn into mist, too. Bad news for you, bro. Amorphous avatars have way too many parts to automate, so they're probably going to be shelved. Man, the last 3 were insane. Terrifying looks are one thing, but they're also hella fast and hit hard. The last 3 were the Ravenous Toad, the 2-headed Fiend Wolf, and the White Mist, right? I heard they're all super powerful. I have a rank 2 friend that spawned in another country. They said their party of 3 challenged the White Mist, but they literally died in seconds. The white one that showed up at the end of the trailer, right? That scene scared the hell out of me, even when I knew it was just a video. You know, the one where it turned into a vague human shape while holding a broken sword, and then did a slasher smile. Holy shit. Yeah, scary, but I think it looked kinda cool too. Deputy Director, we've finished the collection process for the secret alpha testers currently in comas due to collapsed psyches, all 57 of them. This is the request to start the 30 days monitoring process from the collection facility staff. Please sign here. Yeah. All right, that's done, right. Thank you. The secretary of the 7th Research Center entered the deputy director's room with electronic documents in hand. Ryan touched his finger in a few spots. The documents changed color from a light yellow tint to a light blue, acknowledging Brian's fingerprints. He gave the documents back. The secretary bowed lightly, then gingerly asked, "Deputy Director, should I be present for the tester's disposal 30 days later?" "Well, somebody should. If you're volunteering, all the better. Is there any reason why you asked?" "Not quite. If I had to say, perhaps I just wanted to send off the girl who survived the whole thing. I suppose that's how you women are, so sentimental." "Number 13, right. I thought putting her in for the final scene of the trailer would be a great idea, and I was right. Man, that part was awesome, wasn't it?" "It was. However, it may lead to more people requesting amorphous avatars, once the official release is out and people can choose to play as simple monster avatars. Will it be a problem?" Yeah, that. Their plans for the first unveiling of monster avatars included 15 different types. They did not include amorphous monsters. These avatar types were too unstable in terms of movements and body shapes. To use them with any modicum of skill, players would have to delegate most of the processing to the AI automation, and in essence this would make it no different from playing with a gamepad, like how old games used to be. I mean, amorphous monsters aren't good to use in the first place. They have weak attacks and are highly vulnerable to magic. To fully utilize their strong points, the players would need to be able to freely transform themselves, but that's totally impossible for normal people. If anything, number 13 was simply way too much of an exception. Brian let loose a stream of words, almost sounding like he was making excuses. The secretary only nodded. Indeed, even among the secret alpha testers, she was unique. The players should understand once we disclose the combat power data for amorphous monsters. So anyway, Brian smiled sweetly after confirming that most of his work for the day was done. "I'm off work now. Wanna have dinner? I know a place." The beautiful woman smiled back, just as sweet. "I'll sue you for abuse of authority." To most, World of Yggdrasia was an open-world game. A fictional world. Only a select few of a certain corporation, and the top brass of a certain country's government were aware of the truth. That this world was real, and it was changing. Under the influence of the unaware beta testers and the undercover staff members, Yggdrasia was changing. In the northern reaches of the central continent lay Treston, one of the large countries of Yggdrasia. In a nearby grassy field, a petite traveler clad in a cloak was walking in silence, steadily, tirelessly. From their height, perhaps they hadn't even passed 10 years of age. The oversized cloak of a grown man covered them whole. The hem was ragged with tears and dirtied by the ground. Pale, bare feet peeked out with every step they took. There were small monsters, wolves, and other such creatures living in this area of grassland. A single child traveling would be suicidal. Yet at the moment, the beasts had all hidden themselves, almost as if in fear. The child had not been attacked even once. Following behind their steps was a bouncing ball of slime, its color of light green masking it among the grass. The child raised their head. A mischievous breeze blew past, pulling the hood down, revealing a head of slightly curly hair, so white it almost glimmered in the light, and eyes of scarlet, of faintly shining rubies. Drooping white rabbit ears lightly shivered in front of the chilly wind. There stood a girl of unearthly beauty. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, low rank. The demon of bewitching mist that dances upon the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points. 750 out of 750. Plus 92. Total combat power, 825 out of 825, plus 326. Unique skill, reroll, cyber manipulation. Racial skill, fear, simple identification. Humanoid form adept, expert packer. It had been 3 days since that battle. 3 days since the secret alpha testers were all gone. I lost to the beta players back then. My consciousness was on the verge of being extinguished, but at the very last moment, I managed to escape the clutches of the system and evolved. I lived. I didn't know how I was able to evolve. Perhaps the blue magic stone from number 1 had something to do with it. At first, I thought that meant he could have evolved, too, but he didn't. Maybe the no further evolutions implemented mentioned in the text I identified didn't mean that there was a software lock to prevent evolution. Maybe the developers simply wasn't yet able to recreate those higher-ranking monsters. Maybe the corporation still hadn't completed analyzing the powerful monsters in this world. Then why was I the only one who could evolve? The clues lay inside number 1 knowledge. It didn't tell me everything, but it was enough to make a guess. It must be because I was a demon. Within the blue magic stone was a part of number 1 knowledge and memories. Perhaps he didn't want his insanity to take these important things away from him, so he had engraved them all inside this stone. According to his knowledge, there still existed some unidentified monster species. The developers could have just removed the choices altogether, but they wanted diversity. So they decided to let the player's consciousness determine their evolutions. In the end, it seemed like this was the reason why all the other alpha testers who picked these unidentified monsters had had their minds broken upon the first evolution. The form they took was too grotesque, too horrifying to bear. That was too close. Perhaps in a way, my choice of an amorphous monster was the correct one. In other words, I think I had just managed to, by my own will, unconsciously determine the self I wanted to evolve into. Shuddy, race, Mistral, lesser demon. Low rank, the demon of bewitching mist that dances upon the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points. 750 out of 750, plus 92. Total combat power. 825 out of 825, plus 326. Unique skill. Reroll. Cyber manipulation. Racial skill. Fear. Simple identification. Humanoid form. Adept. Expert packer. As a result, I was able to evolve and survive. Now I had a whole slew of new things to comment on. First off, Mistral 1. Oh no, it's the white mist, people kept saying. Then I would deny them and my thoughts, no I'm not. I'm made out of gases, not mist, and now look at what happened. I can't believe their words actually affected me this much. Then my class. I was still at lesser and low rank. Where were all the good adjectives? Who even decided these rankings? Anyway, it seemed like I still had a long journey ahead. I gained more magic, and this time my combat power went up correctly. What a relief. If my combat power stayed still forever no matter what I did, I'd be super nervous going into fights with multiple enemies. Despite killing tons of beta players that time, my magic didn't grow all that much. No surprise there. When I died, I was still under the shackles of the system, so half of my magic was taken. And now, I had no further revives. Oh boy. The unique skill, cyber manipulation, used to be number 1 ability. It was how I escaped the system's monitoring. It wasn't my own skill, so it was quite weak, or rather, I hadn't been able to fully utilize it yet. But midway through the process, my consciousness was cut off, and so did their monitoring. For the time being, they should still be believing I was truly gone. Now, humanoid form, adept, and expert packer. Let's start with this weird packer thing. To be honest, I think skilled had already turned into expert since the last fight, since I noticed that even when dispersed, I still couldn't see the items I was carrying. Where could they be? How curious. And now, the most important topic of the day. Humanoid form, as normal, turned into adept. I got a boost to my magic and density. I didn't need to carefully craft my body. I just needed to remember what I used to look like for a near-perfect mimicry. But the damn rabbit ears were still there. They were the same white as my hair. The spindly ears drooped from the top of my head all the way down below my chin. Maybe the hood could hide them. Blobsy responded to my voice with a bounce. In the beginning, I couldn't speak. Once my transformation became near perfect in fidelity, enough so that my mouth could hold air, I started practicing. Then it turned out that if I just let my body's instinct guide me, speech would come rather easily. Still, my human form was only on the outside. Inside of me continued to be thick mist. It took some practice for me to be able to move like a real human. I spent a whole month moving as an inhuman mass, after all. My walking gait was still wobbly. Contact with humans was going to be inevitable. I didn't want my mannerism to reveal who I am. So during the brief moments of no time, I took the chance to walk around the mountains and generally just practicing being human. I looked about the same as I used to, so getting used to it probably wouldn't take long. By manipulating cyberspace and cutting off my consciousness, I had managed to escape the system. Perhaps number 1 didn't do the same because of the low chance of success. He didn't want to fail and bring trouble to his friends. Yet despite my success, I still wasn't completely free. I'd been using mana to maintain the monster avatar, and ever since the beginning my brain had already been acting in place of a part of the system to process my actions. There was no problem with me, except for a critical one. My consciousness was here, yet my real body. My soul was still on Earth. In number 1 plan, as long as he was under life support, he could still use cyber manipulation to maintain the fragile link to his real body. But then, despite his mind already nearing the limits, he risked another use of his ability. He found out that the bodies of the comatose testers would be destroyed after 1 month. I had 30 days left to live and to find a solution. Number 1 said that if I could gather the magic stones from his friends, number 8 and number 17, then get to the source of this world's life, the world tree, perhaps there'd be a way. Fleeting hope. But hope nonetheless. My clock was counting down. No, let's stop with the pessimistic thoughts. I could have died in that battle. I should count myself lucky to get a 30 days extension instead. It'd be tough going to travel the whole world in just 30 days. Luckily, the humans had high-speed transportations. Maybe I could get on a Magitech train. So the point of all of this roundabout explanation was that I needed an appearance that could get me inside the human cities. Luckily, number 17 had died relatively close to me. I could follow to the north of the mountain range where I used to be to reach them. There was a high chance the beta party that killed them and took their magic stone was staying in a nearby country. Within the information number 1 left behind was a map, complete with the country's locations. Closest to number 17 was a small country. But if number 1 magic stone looked like a gem, then maybe number 17 looked similar, too. Perhaps the beta party would take it to the large country further south to the small country to sell it. Judging from the location of the mountain range, I should be getting close to that large country by now. Another half a day of walking through the grassland, and I finally found a small road. Following it, I found a farming village, looking similar to the one I once saw before. Well, I said village, but there are easily a few hundred people living there. And I saw around the same number of beastmen slaves working the fields. Now, the question was, would I be pushed back by the village's barrier? I only saw a fence to defend against wolves, so my guess was that the barrier was specifically for monsters. Unwittingly, my steps turned timid. I came closer and closer, yet it seemed like there was no such barrier on the road. I wasn't sure why. Instead, there were 2 soldiers standing guard in front of the village entrance. They were wearing simple, matching armors with some sort of crest. I fixed my hood, making sure my ears weren't visible. My cloak was squeaky clean thanks to Blobsy, but it was still an oversized piece of garment. The hem was all ragged and full of tears. "Hey, you kid over there, stop," one of the soldiers called. "Ain't seen that sort of look before. Not a village kid. Where'd you come from?" "Over there." I pointed to the grassy field. The soldier looked even more incredulous. "Suspicious. Show me your face." "Nah, man, no need for that. Look, if you can pay the fee, we'll let you in, all right. Just 1 silver. Surprise flashed on the other guard's face, then quickly turned into a leering smirk. I was probably getting ripped off here. Yes, I paid without any complaints. For a moment, the guard looked puzzled. Apparently he just wanted to make a bit of trouble for me. He hesitantly looked to the other guard. "Oh, sorry, it's actually 1 silver for each of us. Should have been clearer, really." "Yes." I gave the other guard another coin. They looked pleased with themselves, then waved me through like they were chasing away cats. 8, come in quick. Don't make trouble. And kid, it's another 2 coins when you're leaving. Get it ready. I never thought they'd be asking for bribes this shamelessly. That was a huge expense, even if it was necessary. Well, not like I actually knew how much a silver was worth anyway. Honestly, if I was standing guard, I wouldn't have let a shady kid hiding her face in a hood who just walked from the grassy field inside the village. In a way, them being shitty people worked out well for me. Fixing up my appearance was my current top priority. I only came here to find information about the big cities, among other info, and to find children's clothes. Otherwise I wouldn't have bothered with this sort of village that looked like it had 0 interesting things going on. I glanced to the side of the road, looking at the fields being worked only by beastmen slaves. I walked on, towards an area with a few buildings packed closely together. The atmosphere felt like the sort of shopping district you usually see in the countryside. A few people sent me looks full of suspicions. I saw a place with sheets of fabric and old clothes hanging outside and entered. Inside, the plump shopkeeper saw me and grimaced. "This ain't a playground, kid. I want clothes," I said, setting a few silver coins on the counter. The woman's attitude turned a whole 180 degrees, and she instantly put on a smile. My children's clothes, right. I have a few good pieces over there, honey." There weren't much in variety. I picked up a few dresses and sashes. "Do you have shoes? Leather, if possible. And a coat with a hood, too. Here you go. Boots still new, see. And this coat here, I got it from a merchant from the capital. Really popular with the girls, I hear. Do you have satchels? 8, cloth or leather?" "Leather." Honestly, it was just my bias speaking when I picked leather. The material really gave off that rugged traveler feel. I also picked up some underwear and socks, then changed in the back. This coat fit me so much better. I could hide my ears while still showing my face, so I looked a lot less shady now. I left the changing room. The shopkeeper woman took a look at my face. She seemed somewhat surprised. "My, honey, you look adorable. Have you finished shopping?" "Yeah, all right. I'll just take those coins you left on the counter, then. I'm taking a loss here, so you better be grateful, okay?" There were a few large silver coins together with small ones. Were the large ones really so low in value? These were just second-hand clothes. I thought all the stuff I bought wouldn't even reach $150. I returned to the shopping district. With decent clothing, there were a lot less suspicious gazes now, but a few of them were staring at my face, perhaps due to seeing an unfamiliar kid. There was a street stall selling skewers of meat, with chairs to the side for customers. I started a conversation with the owner, almost as a way to run from the uncomfortable stares. "Excuse me, how much for one of those?" "Welcome. Small skewers are 1 copper each, large ones are 3. I want as much as I can buy with this, then." "Thank you for your business. 1 small silver it is, then. And an extra small skewer for such a cute young lady." I handed over the coin. The man was all smiles as he gave me 3 large skewers and 2 small ones. "So that's 10 coppers, not counting the extra. A small silver was about $10, right? If the currency followed powers of 10, then a normal silver was $100. And that woman took 5 of those." I thought people in the countryside were supposed to be caring and good-natured. The owner of the stall seemed like a decent guy, so I asked him a few things, like where the large cities were. Supposedly, I could ride a horse carriage to a neighboring town half a day's ride away, then get a stagecoach to the capital. He told me where the town was. I gave my thanks and left the shopping district. Blobsy, still hiding inside my satchel, happily chomped on the skewers. But then I detected a human magical signal tailing me. When I escaped into a nearby copse of tree, their walk turned into a jog and they caught up. "Girlie, wait up." They turned out to be the kind man running the street stall. "Mr. Stallkeeper, did you need something?" "Yeah, I noticed, you know. I saw them peeking out earlier." He smiled wryly, scratching his head. And then he took out a wooden pestle, probably taken from his stall, and smacked it against his empty palm in an intimidating gesture. "Girl, you're one of those beastmen, right? Must be a canine type, then, by the looks of your drooping ears. Come now, you stinky demi-humans aren't supposed to be coming into human lands, didn't you know that? I'll sell you to a nice place, so behave yourself and come with me, okay?" "What the hell do you mean, okay?" I thought the attitude was limited to the slave hunters only, but even normal human citizens were like this. And the man didn't even seem to be thinking he was doing something wrong. He reached out his hand to me, with the same kind of nonchalance as a hunter would have when they shot a rabbit just because they saw an easy prey. I sighed, exasperated. This was so far beyond my expectations. Weren't they supposed to be real, living people, not NPCs programmed with cruelty? Answering the man's beckoning, I also reached out my right hand, gack, and returned it to mist, which then proceeded to invade his mouth, filling his lungs and stopping his breathing. I drained him dry from the inside. "Hey, Blobsy, some more snack for you." Boing. Author's note: the human race doesn't see this as a crime. Perhaps to them, demi-humans were nothing but livestock. Shetty can't afford to be discovered, so she's hesitating less and less. Dealing with the stallkeeper was easier than I thought. The mental aspect of it, not the physical method. I expected hesitation, even for me. They weren't NPCs in a game, they were real living people. In the end, I didn't really feel anything. Had the past month twisted me so much? Or had I fully adopted the mindset of a monster? At any rate, all life, to me, was separated into 3 neat boxes: allies, enemies, and the uninvolved. I could not see the world in any other way. Well, it's too late for contemplation now. I'd already killed bandits and merchants, after all. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, low rank, the demon of bewitching mist that dances upon the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 7 out of 52, plus 5. Total combat power, 830 out of 830, plus 5. Unique skill, reroll, cyber manipulation. Racial skill, fear, simple identification. Humanoid form, adept, expert packer. I had Blobsy dispose of the corpse before people could discover him and raise a fuss. I exited the thicket and went back to the road, looking as innocent as an angel. If I took him to be the standard for non-combatant citizens, I was quite sure I could massacre 100 of them without any problems. But there was no guarantee all humans were similarly terrible. And I didn't even have the spare time to be going around killing anyway. 26 days of borrowed time left. I needed to find the 2 other magic stones and reach the world tree by then. So anyway, I didn't expect my ears to be exposed so easily. It's true that I still hadn't gotten used to having a human body yet, but was I really that eye-catching? Back on Earth, I used to get curious looks all the time for being albinic. However, people in this world had more than just black, blonde, or brown hair. There were silver, deep blue, scarlet, and many other colors too. I didn't think I would stand out here. The form I was currently taking was the image of myself that I had. except I didn't look emaciated and full of bruises. I was looking completely healthy for my age, so there's even less of a reason for people to take notice. I wondered why I was different from my memory of how I used to look like. Perhaps I had subconsciously optimized myself, and the results of the optimization included rabbit ears. And I didn't just have the ears. I only realized when changing in the second-hand clothing store that I also had a rabbit's tail around the size of a human fist above my butt. Why? Why were the ears and tail necessary? Well, what's done is done. I just have to hide the ears with my coat's hood. I still had around 10 silvers and a few small silvers taken from the bandits. I'd really prefer to have some more funds, though. That shopkeeper woman and the guards really put a dent to my wallet. They'll get what's coming to them sooner or later. It was getting late, but I had no intention to rent a room in a village that treated every outsiders as bags of coins. Even if the innkeeper looked like a nice person, if they saw my rabbit ears, they might still decide to barge into my room at midnight with a stick. So I hid myself in one of the thickets dotting the village. Once night came, I stealthily moved towards the fields. Here, unlike Earth's polluted night sky, the stars alone were plenty bright enough to light my way. Well, it wasn't like I actually needed the light to be able to see. I transformed into a quasi-misty human shape to not leave behind any footsteps, and floated towards a small shack adjacent to the fields. There were around 10 people inside, judging from the magical signals. The shack, it was closer to a storage room, really wasn't locked. The door looked like it would break from a single swing of a hand axe anyway. I peeked through the gap and saw only men. Demi-humans, from early teens all the way until around 50 years old. There was no floor, only hardened dirt. I saw what looked like straw beds in the back. Everyone looked hygienic enough, but they were only wearing some shabby work clothes. They were sitting around a small fire set in the center of the storage room, tiredly waiting for the pot of vegetables to finish cooking. Besides the walls and roofs, this was no different from camping in the wilds. 6 canine beastmen, 3 felines, 1 elf. All of them were below 100 in power, though that still probably made them stronger than the human villagers. I opened the door and stepped inside. Around half of them instantly noticed. They looked up. "Who are you? What does a kid like you want with us?" A beastman sitting by the fireside asked, looking tired but cautious. He looked closer to a wolf than a dog. "We may be slaves, but we're not toys for you kids to play with even into the night. That's not why I'm here." I took off my hood. The group of beastmen gasped as they saw my drooping ears. "You're a canine type." "No, a rabbit. I've never heard of that beastman race before." The wolf beastman looked over to the elven man, who frowned and shook his head. "Neither have I, although I had heard that during my grandfather's time, there lived more than just the current canine and feline beastman races. However, these other races had all been hunted down to be pets for the humans. They were supposed to have already gone extinct a few hundred years ago. There were survivors. They looked at me with skeptical eyes. I shook my head. I don't know what I am. All I knew was that all my fellows had died. I'd been hiding myself on my journey until now. "I see. You must have had a rough time too, girl. Don't mind me. I just have a few things I wanted to ask." I told them the humans stole something from me and that I was on a journey to get it back. Then I asked them about the barrier around this village and about the bigger cities. I think the barrier came from the magitool to repel monsters that was in the mayor's house. As for the cities, you better not go, young lady. With looks like that, plus how rare your race is, you're going to get enslaved right off the bat. Those damn bastards think that anything not human were their livestock. Why didn't you run? A feline beastman, who have been quietly listening until now, scowled in self-derision. He spat out words like they were poison. "Don't you see these collars, girlie? As long as they were still on our necks, they would choke us once we get too far from the mayor's magitool." The women were taken somewhere else. Even my daughter caught the mayor's eyes. I didn't know where he took her. "We're fated to work here until our deaths. Are you giving up? Watch your mouth, girl. What do you know?" I moved to his back in a flash, before the outraged feline could stand up. My dagger touched his neck. "You." The feline beastman was shocked still. As the wolf beastman glared daggers at me, I threw the dagger I was holding to his feet. "What do you want?" "For you. If you're tired of living, why not kill yourself? Faster that way." All their breathing hitched. I could see anger simmering in their eyes. Unconcerned, I dropped a few more daggers at their feet, then turned my back on them and walked toward the door. "Wait, girl. I'm going to a human city. Maybe after I break a few of the mayor's toys. Those are for you. Whether you use them to die or to live, that's up to you." Even after I left the storage room, none of them were moving. None of them so much as said a word. I headed toward the large mansion that seemed to be the mayor's house, where I had detected a rather strong magical signal during the morning. There were no guards. Perhaps these people had absolute trust on the monster-repellent magitool. However, as I infiltrated under the cover of darkness, I did encounter a few floating fireflies. I crushed them all, just in case. According to number 1 information, these firefly-looking things were the corporation's observation drones. The drones' design emphasized stealth, so even wild birds could break them. Me destroying them here wouldn't be a problem. I would have liked to get some intel from the drones, but as of the moment, my power wasn't enough to do it. I walked directly to the front doors. I dispersed my right arm, moving the mist through the cracks, then re-solidified to unlock the bolt from the inside. The mayor's mansion was incredibly bright, despite the fact that this world was supposed to be similar to Earth's medieval ages. There were magical lights all over the place. I saw a few other magitools that looked like modern electrical appliances, too. There were no fireplaces, yet the place still felt somewhat warm. Were there air conditioners, too? The lights were on, yet no one was around. A closer look revealed a note on a table. According to it, the mayor's wife had gone drinking in the shopping district and wouldn't be back until morning. This village was being pretty extravagant in using mana, I see. The magical signal I detected was under me. I scoured the mansion to find a path down. As I descended the stairs, I heard the whimpering of a girl, together with a man's chuckles. Hey, come now, we're only getting started. No, a middle-aged man was whipping a young beastman girl with what looked to be a riding crop, his other hand holding a bottle of alcohol. The girl was curling up, sobbing in pain. Deeper into the room, I saw an altar emanating magic. As I approached, the drunken man, the mayor, most likely, realized my presence. What, just a little beastman girl? Come closer. Oh, right, my hood was still down. I repeated my mist hand into Lung's trick again, making sure to drain him dry to his soul. He writhed, his face deathly pale, his hands scrabbling to tear out his throat. Finally, the mummy collapsed. Seeing his death, the girl squeaked. I ignored her and took a nearby hand axe to smash apart all the magitools on the altar. The room felt so much cleaner now. The mansion's lights were off. I wonder why. I wasn't paying attention when they started getting shut down. Excuse me. The girl hesitantly called after me. She still seemed to be seeing well enough in the dark room. I paid no attention to her, moving up the stairs to exit the mansion. The faint magical pressure that I could feel everywhere in the village was flickering. It probably wouldn't take more than a few days before monsters started attacking this place. Not like I had the time to worry about those beastmen, anyway. On a closer look, the house lights dotting the village were all gone, too. Screams sounded out here and there. Maybe there was a fuse box analog among the tools on the altar. I wasn't sure whether the altar had the magitool monitoring the slave collars or not, and I had no intention of verifying that, either. With the village in chaos, I disappeared into the darkness, seeking the neighboring town that had the stagecoach to the capital. Boing. Sorry, Blobsy. No snacks for you this time. 24 days of borrowed time left. Now I could move as fast as a predatory carnivore if I flew in my quasi-mist humanoid form, even over long distance. It still took me more than a whole day to reach the town with a stagecoach ride to the capital. Now the problem was, could I enter the town without any trouble? There was the usual barrier around the town. I could only get in through the main road and gate. From what I could see of it from afar, it looked quite developed. There was a train line running through it. Then the train must go to the capital too, right? That's how it goes, normally. I wonder why the villagers said a stagecoach instead. I'd probably understand once I got in. The thing is, this was a decently large town. The gate guards here were a lot more thorough, even checking everyone's faces. Just my face would be fine. It'd be a much bigger problem if they told me to remove my hood. They might even bring out the pitchforks right on the spot. Would simply flying by myself actually be faster than a carriage ride? As I continued walking in contemplation, I noticed a man holding a blood-soaked lump of flesh by the roadside. He looked creepy. Scratch that, he looked outright dangerous. The lump of flesh dripping blood in his left hand was a head, horned and savage-looking. He was calling at all the horse carriages and travelers passing by. With how menacing he looked, it was no surprise all of them either took a detour or sped up to avoid him. Dangerous man. Race, human male. Adventurer. Magic points. MP. 142 out of 150. Hit points. HP. 200 out of 200. Total combat power. 787. Strong. Pretty much equal to me. So there were humans this powerful. Who was he? He looked like trouble, so I pulled up my hood and tried my best to pass by him without attracting his attention. It didn't work. Hey you, the little girl. Yes, I'm talking to you. Stop ignoring me. What is it? He looked in his mid-20s. Short flaming red hair, scarlet eyes. Handsome face, if you ignore the cocky smile full of teeth. generally just an all-around good-looking man. His clothes seemed to be quite expensive originally, but the hardened blood splatters had already turned it black. Honestly, he stank. What is it? You already said that. And why are you pinching your nose this time? How terribly rude. Okay, again, what? Annoyed, but also realizing the conversation was going nowhere, the man held the head to me. Buy this. It's an ogre head. 1 silver's fine. Why? He was telling me to buy the ogre head. Why? I tilted my head, fingers still pinching my nose. His mood got even worse. Come on, girl, that's an ogre. OGRE. Just bring it to the Adventurers Guild. You can get 1 whole small gold coin for selling the horn plus the bounty reward. Why don't you go dare yourself? Stop pinching your nose already. Sure, I want to, but unluckily, my companion was keeping all my identification and money. I can only meet up with them inside the town. You see the problem? So basically, people entering the town needed to have either an identification card or the money to pay the fee. He didn't have either, so he was trying to get a silver coin by selling the ogre head to passers-by. He was probably from a well-off family. Quite irresponsible, though. Why did you split up with them? We came from Two's Empire for the auction. I thought I had some spare time, so I went hunting a little bit. Then I saw this ogre. Pretty much just jumped off the horse and hunted it down on a spur-of-the-moment thing. Didn't think it'd lead me on a merry chase for that long. Whoops, he laughed boisterously. I really sympathized with whoever was with him. So the entrance fee is 1 silver coin. What, you didn't know? The silver's the fee to make a temporary identity card. If you make an official one later on, you can get that silver refunded. So girl, buy the head for me. Let's see, how about I lend you a silver and you help me get inside the town? A lone kid would be suspicious, but perhaps not as much if I was with an adult. The man ruminated for a bit, then immediately nodded. Not sure what you're thinking, but fine. If anything happens, it'd be this country's problem, not mine. All right, little girl, I accept. Then we have a deal. Here, 2 silvers, pay the fee for both of us. Also, Blobsy. Boing, though, ho-ho, isn't that a jelly slime? You sure have a rare pet there. Apparently she was a rarely seen monster. The man stared with great interest. Blobsy jumped out from my satchel. According to my will, she clung to the man's clothes and cleaned off the dirt and blood splatters. Oh man, that's hella convenient. I heard people said you wouldn't ever have any trash in your mansion if you could have one of these. Better hide it well, little girl. Shetty, I'm not girl, nor am I you. My name's Shetty. I didn't really need to tell him this, but honestly getting called you and girl all the time was getting a little annoying. I see. Right then, Shetty, I shall deign to allow you to call me Tiz. I felt like this was going to be so much trouble later on. Also, lend me that ogre head. I'll store it until we get in. Ooh, are you a packer then? You're a surprisingly convenient girl, Shetty. Packer. According to him, once in a blue moon there would be someone born with a mysterious power, like increased physical strength or water breathing. For example, these people were considering to be divinely blessed, the children of God. Among them existed people with the power to store more items than normal into the bags or satchels that they use, and they were called packers. I see. Packers do tend to be misunderstood. I'm a child of God too. I understand how it feels to be the target of envy. Apparently, shop owners who didn't know how it worked were often afraid that the power would make it easier for packers to shoplift, when in fact they could only expand their bag capacity. They couldn't make the items disappear into thin air. I could, though. I was storing the items inside my body, after all. By the way, my power is the blessing of fire. The fire I create would be stronger, and I would be unharmed by any and all flames. Is that so? So there are special people like us secret alpha testers in the new world, too. Not long after, I and the good-for-nothing adult named Tiz got past the town gates. The gate guards took a few glances at me, but once the decently dressed noble-looking Tiz said she's with me, they let us through without further questions. Appearances really are important. By the way, you said there's an auction. What are you going to buy? Yeah, there is. I heard the adventurers brought a yellow magic stone that looked like a precious jewel. If I set it in a magic sword, maybe I can get a special power out of it. I see. Looked like coming here was the right decision. Well then, thank you, Tiz. Here, your ogre head. Wait up. Don't take it out here. It's going to get me filthy again. Besides, I'm not in the habit of receiving free favors from women and children. Come with me, I'll repay you that money. Where are we going? The Adventurers Guild, obviously. What? Tiz pretty much just grabbed me by the arm and dragged me all the way to the building. This was the first time in my life visiting a town in another world, and I didn't even have the time for sightseeing. The streets I saw when I was being dragged looked a lot like old-time Western Europe. The Adventurers Guild was a 3 stories building made of stone, rustic both outside and inside. I wondered if I was the first ever monster to enter the guild hall. Shetty, take out the ogre head. Got it. I pretended to take the head out from my satchel. Tiz started up some sort of negotiation with the receptionist lady. I moved to a corner, trying to stay unnoticed. It was morning. There were a few groups of adventurers looking at requests, chatting, or talking with the guild staff. To deal with the increase of the monster population, the world's powers had agreed to the founding of an organization to represent personal mercenaries. In other words, the Adventurers Guild. Before, bands of mercenaries would have to negotiate directly with nobles or merchants for work, a function which the guild had now taken over. To say the truth, this guild hall was problematic. Adventurers were monster specialists. They were decently powerful. A quick glance didn't show me any probable beta players. However, there were some people over 300 combat power among the capable-looking ones. Now, the problem wasn't that they had high combat power. The problem was that even the people who looked rather strong only had around 300 combat power. Within this world existed a method to discern the opponent's magic and combat power. Identification. And my magic and power were far above the adventurers. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, low rank, the demon of bewitching mist that dances upon the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points. 760 out of 760. Plus 5. Total combat power. 836 out of 836. Plus 6. Unique skill. Reroll. Cyber manipulation. Racial skill. Fear. Simple identification. Humanoid form. Adept. Expert packer. I was careless. I thought there were plenty of people as strong as Tiz. In hindsight, maybe he was extra powerful due to his special power, and even he only had 150 magic. The amount of magic I had wasn't just anomalous, it was outright abnormal in comparison. That was why I'd been hiding out in a corner, trying not to draw attention to myself. Shetty, come here. And then Tiz shouted my name. Damn it, what the hell was he doing? A few adventurers turned around. He might just shout me out again if I ignored him, so I quietly headed toward the counter he was at. You're slow. What do you want? I replied sullenly. He looked at me as if I was an idiot, and said, sounding like it was the most obvious thing in the world, to register you. What else? What? Bewildering. I honestly didn't understand what he was saying. Tiz just grinned. I just re-registered too. Apparently you don't need an identity card, you just need to have enough combat power to do it. You do it too. Just place your hand on this crystal. Seriously, what sort of crap is he forcing on me here? Damn you. The large crystal was still showing Tiz's magic and combat power in shining numbers. As I unwittingly moved away, Tiz grabbed and forcefully put my hand on the crystal. I don't need to register, just do it already. It's going to be really troublesome for you if you don't have an identity card. Crap, no. Reroll, 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 reroll. Magic points, 120. Total combat power, 196. Wow, you're quite strong. Thank you. Thank God the crystal only displayed my current numbers. I frantically used my unique skill to reduce my magic. Some adventurers spilled their drinks, some tripped, some had the back of the chairs they were leaning on suddenly broke, some staff members spilled ink on their documents. Screams broke out all around me. I acquired an adventurer's registration card without further trouble. Tiz handed me half of the ogre's reward and material sale. I got 5 silver coins. He paid the registration fee for me too. I wasn't going to bother saying thanks. Bye. Thanks for the help, Shetty. Come again in a few years once you've grown into a beauty. I'll make you mine. He guffawed with gusto. Who the hell would date you? And you didn't even say who or where you were. How exhausting. In many ways, at that. Looked like there weren't many who could use identification. A 10 uses crystal already costed 3 silvers when you have to do it nearly 100 times to learn the skill. And I heard that even when you learned the skill, if you belonged to the human race which had weak sensory organs, you'd still consume quite a bit of magic. Normal adventurers had to be economical with their skill, also using the crystal once in a while. No one would waste their magic and money in haphazard identifications. Perhaps the 1-point mana cost was only due to me being a monster. I really needed a way to hide my monster status better. After a while, I finally found my destination, the stagecoach. I talked to the bored-looking middle-aged driver. Excuse me, how much for a ride to the capital? The capital, it'll be 5 silvers, and we leave in 3 days. If the weather's nice, maybe we'll arrive in 5 days. I see, thanks. I buried my shock to say my courtesies, then left. I could handle the price one way or another, but 3 days plus another 5. Too much of a waste of time. I began to really consider just flying there. However, this was a 5 days journey on a horse carriage. I could all too easily get lost. So I checked out the train. Lucky for me, there was one train heading to the capital that started running tonight, and it would take only a day. That's really fast. But the ticket was 5 small golds. Let's see. Currency followed powers of 10, so 10 times a silver. $5,000. You gotta be kidding me. I only had around 10 silvers on hand. Even if I headed out right now to find and confiscate some bandit's treasury, it'd take more than a day. Alright, smuggling it is. As I began looking for ways to sneak myself on board, I heard a man's voice from behind me, speaking almost in a whisper. Hey, young lady, you want on that train, right? I know a way. Author's note, quick explanation of identification, skills, and children of God. Among normal citizens, almost no one could use identification as a skill. Only some merchants could. And learning the skill wasn't without drawbacks. The human race with their low perception would have to consume 10 magic for each use. Even adventurers would only use the skill in critical situations. Most people with a need to identify still buy and use crystals instead. The reason for the low number of people who could use the skill wasn't just due to the cost, it was also due to the fact that there weren't that many crystals on the market in the first place. The temples, in order to keep the price of the crystals stable for the adventurer's benefit, were limiting the amount of available crystals. Thus, demand was always high. Skills were generally acquired after training. Humanity in Yggdrasia weren't even aware that skills have different levels. Then how were ranks decided? With each rise in level of the combat skill, a person could learn and use one more combat art. This number of learnable arts decided ranks. Players learned arts automatically. In self-identification, the only people who could see the general skills they possessed were players. The special abilities of the children of God were different from skills. It was said that the abilities came to be due to the influence of mana. Only 1 in 1,000 was born with these abilities. Perhaps the secret alpha tester's special abilities also came from the mana leaking from Yggdrasia into Earth. Hey, young lady, you want on that train, right? I know a way. I turned to the voice. It was a lanky man, around 30 years old. His clothes would make him look like a perfectly normal citizen if you ignored the shady eyes and shifty mannerisms. Honestly, he was terribly suspicious. What? Come now, no need to be so cautious. And don't raise your voice. It's obvious the ticket price is giving you trouble, right? Then I've got just the thing. The man moved closer and whispered in a barely audible voice. Tell me, how much can you pay? 8 silvers, I replied honestly. The man scowled, looking obviously disappointed. Not quite enough, but it's leaving tonight anyway. Fine, then. Come with me. Coincidentally, we have a free spot tonight. No guarantees of comfort, though. I just nodded. The man merrily walked off, and I followed. He might as well be having bright neon signs above his head saying illegal dealings here. Normally, you'd think maybe he was the type of smuggler who snuck people into the cargo room, but upon closer consideration, something felt not quite right. The capital was far away, but it only took 5 days by coach. The train might be able to get there in a single day without delays and without risking bandits, but I didn't think there was that much demand for this sort of passenger smuggling. The only people with that sort of need were probably wanted fugitives or refugees. It was shady as all hell, but in my case, I had a good reason for following him. We left the dazzling train station behind, following the rails. I saw less and less people. Houses began to be replaced by shelters made from dirt and mud. Perhaps the noise and vibration of the train had driven down the land price here. We entered a large storehouse by the railway. There were some 10+ humans checking on some sort of wooden crates, plus a few beastmen slaves carrying a large crate. The man shouted toward the back of the room. Chairman, one last passenger here. Hey, good job. A deep voice answered. It belonged to a wide-set man full of muscle, looking to be around 50. He totally looked like a boss of a bandit gang under disguise. The boss examined me from head to toe. He smirked. Hell, didn't expect this from you. You got us a fine one. Hey. The lanky man creepily chuckled. Slaves, get the cargo outside to the station. Girl, you go this way. At this point, I didn't think there was going to be a twist revealing these men to actually be good people. I still quietly followed the so-called chairman. We stopped in front of a large crate. You'll stay in here. Another man to the side of the crate opened the lid. I saw only little girls inside, both human and beastmen. There were around 10 of them packed closely together, all pretty and looking like they were carefully chosen. Some were sobbing, some with blank faces, already resigning themselves to their fates. Some were cowering in fear. Hey, they didn't look like passengers to me, I muttered. The chairman puffed out a chortle, which then turned into full-blown guffawing. Is that so? Sorry to disappoint you, then. They're actually getting pretty good treatment here. There's still presents for the nobles in the capital, after all. Then he gave an order, his hands busy taking out a cigar. You two, collect our newest passenger's fare and get her in. Got it. The lanky man and another man sniggered. Their hands reached toward me. Well, this was pretty much within expectations. All right, give us all you work. I turned both my arms into mist, filling up their lungs and absorbed their life. As I thought, my combat power was still too low to drain them dry in an instant. I'd only recovered 10% of my magic. Come on, what's taking you two so long? Their groaning prompted the chairman to turn around, and he was greeted with the sight of his men rapidly turning into standing mummies. The cigar, just lit, dropped out of his wide-open mouth. Wah. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, low rank, magic points, 206 out of 776, plus 16, total combat power, 282 out of 853, plus 17. I knew this already, but humans were really so much more efficient. I totally understood the feelings of those monsters that attacked humans as soon as they saw them now. And it wasn't like I'd go on a human murdering spree anyway. Finding these kind of garbage of society people to kill was a rare occasion for me. I kept my arms misty, throwing a smile full of gratitude to the chairman. His face twitched. He shouted, "All you lot, come here. This damn brat's a freak." Answering the call, around 5 of his underlings ran inside from the entrance. Perhaps the rest were getting weapons. What's wrong, chairman? This is the brat. Were they just underestimating me because I was a kid, or were they that loyal to their boss? The men came with only their bare hands or at most, small knives as weapons. Their power were around 100. I suppose they were men used to violence at least, and I didn't even have 300 in power at the moment. Still, they had no effective weapons. I would never lose. What the fuck is this Shiark? I choked one of them within bindings of mist. He collapsed like a dry, rotten tree branch. Fear of the unknown pushed the other 4 back a few steps. Bang! Together with a ringing explosion, I felt something pierce through my stomach. Ha, you're dead, freak. The chairman was aiming a curved tube in his hand at me. It looked like a pistol from older days. Here's our chance. Everyone, get her, he commanded. The men suppressed their fear, looked at each other, then nodded. They approached. I turned my right arm tangible again, then took out one of the remaining daggers I had to slice the neck of the leading man. He went down in gurgles. The other 3 men were advancing without much care, so I quasi-mystified into a larger, adult-sized form and drained them dry in an instant. A monster. Apparently, the chairman had been under the impression that turning my arms into mist was just a special ability, much like those of the children of God. Until now, he still thought I was a human. Had I been one, his shot back then would have been truly fatal. Even with my body of mist, it still hurt quite a bit due to the high density I had in my humanoid form. I only just recovered my magic again, and already he made me waste a part of it. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, low rank, magic points, 226 out of 816, plus 40, total combat power, 307 out of 897, plus 44, chairman. I felt over 10 people approaching from the entrance in my radar. Reinforcements with weapons, perhaps. Well then, time to get serious. I returned to complete mist, pouring myself out of my clothes and swelling up into a menacing cloud. In a corner of my vision, I saw the chairman's legs giving out. Fear, me. There was one thing I realized from the battles I'd had until now. I gained more magic from absorbing people who were thinking about bad things. And I could recover more magic from people who fear at the sight of me. Which was why I fought in my true appearance, except I forgot about the kids. What a blunder. Poor kids, some of them even pissed themselves in terror. I really shouldn't be leaving witnesses alive. But, well, don't tell anyone, all right, or else I'll eat you. They seemed to have understood the 3 words I left unsaid when they saw my smile. All of them frantically nodded with tearful eyes. Blopsy snacked on all the corpses anyway, so I didn't think anyone would believe the kids right away if they still decided to talk. They could find their ways back home by themselves, right? I did feel pity for the demi-human kids, but I wasn't obliged to save everyone, nor did I have the leeway. So anyway, I visited the human trafficker's office room to borrow a bit of money. I found 3 large gold coins and 5 small golds. This was plenty enough for an express train ticket. I came back to the station, my mood buoyant. Waiting for me there was a shocking discovery. Wait, you're sold out. Tickets to the capital were sold out. Who the hell would splurge that much on a ticket? According to the young man manning the ticketing office, the train had 5 cars. The first one was the locomotive, so there were 4 cars available. One of those was for freight, another one for dining. People could ride on the remaining 2, but these cars weren't the type that had rows upon rows of seats like I imagined. Instead, they had private rooms with a capacity of 6, and each car had 4 such rooms. There were only 8 rooms in total. The only people who'd pay so much for a ride were the nobles or the affluent, so generally these rooms weren't shared. Paying for a whole room meant paying for 6, but they had money. They didn't care. This time around, there was some big shot from another country. They rented out a whole car. So actually we were already out of tickets since yesterday. By the way, if you don't have an in-room yet, how about coming to my place? No thanks. And here I was, thinking he was surprisingly friendly. It looked like the people here didn't care as much about age as people on Earth, only looks and physique. In town, I even saw a man over 30 linking arms with a teenager. Well, even with that difference, my body was still only that of a kid's anyway. That aside, what to do about the train ride? Fine then, I guess I was smuggling myself aboard. In the end, I went back to my original plan. But now that I knew there was space for trafficking kids in the freight car, I had my way in. If I remembered correctly, a day in this world was around the same as Earth. I saw a brand new clock tower in the center of the town. I wondered if it was a sign of Earth culture leaking through. The train would leave at 9 o'clock tonight. People were getting aboard after having their dinner in town. I blended into the darkness and entered through the freight car's window just before the train set off. As I could just cling on top of the train, but there was a reason why I wanted to secure a relatively safe space. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, low rank, the demon of bewitching mist that dances upon the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 565 out of 935, plus 119. Total combat power, 658 out of 1028, plus 131. Unique skill, reroll, cyber manipulation. Racial skill, fear, simple identification. Humanoid form, adept, expert packer, class rank up available. I didn't know if it was because my magic broke 900 or because my combat power broke 1000. All I knew was that I could rank up again. It said class, so my race wasn't changing, right? I didn't think there'd be a problem. Still, this was my first rank up ever since I escaped the system. Whenever I evolved, the process always finished before I could understand what was going on. All the same, I believed it was better to keep a clear image of what I wanted to be in my mind. All right, I wanted to be stronger while keeping my body of mist. If possible, I wanted to be strong enough for my human form to be combat viable, too. I kept repeating those words in my head, like a mantra, in an attempt to carve them deep into my mind. I sat with knees hugged in a corner of the cargo room, and before I knew it, my consciousness sank into slumber. Hey, Shetty, wake up. Diwa. I thought I didn't need to sleep anymore. I wondered if it was because I was shapeshifting or because I was ranking up, but I saw dreams of those days again, after such a long time. Really, I thought it was time I got over them already. Hey, Shetty, wake up. Biwa. My consciousness awakened in a hurry. Information of the outside world flooded into my head. Why are you here? That's my line. I still had my hood on. My ears should still be hidden for the time being. I stayed seated, knees still hugged, and looked up. Within the clattering freight car, I saw Tiz standing there as if he owned the whole world, looking down at me. The pompous man was wearing clothes much fancier than what he had on when we first parted. Standing behind and to his left was a silver-haired old man in butler clothing. He was holding a lantern, his eyes gazing sharply at me. Behind and to Tiz's right was a woman in night uniform with black hair and a ponytail, looking in her 20s. A sword radiating faint magical light was in her hand. She held it in an alert stance, her eyes glaring with obvious hostility. So it seems she's truly your acquaintance, boy. Who is this girl? Stop it with the boy already, Gramps. She helped me out when I was trying to get in town. So, Shetty, why are you here? Talk. It wasn't an interrogation, so much as it was just his having fun and trying to drive me into a corner, especially as he was drawing near. I started thinking about how to answer. Then all of a sudden, the knight barged in between us. Sir, don't come any closer. She turned to me. Speak. You must be an assassin hired by some other noble, aren't you? If you won't confess, perhaps some torture will. Celia, cease at once. I'm talking to Shetty here. Stay out. Tiz's roar was enough to drown out even the train's clattering for a moment. The knight started and shrank back, flustered. Her face went pale. She bit her lips in discontent and glared daggers at me. Seeing her response, Tiz scowled. He sighed, his hands scratching his head, and he turned to the butler. Gramps, I'll take her to the guest room. Handle the formalities for me. Understood. The butler simply bowed, his eyebrows raising a fraction as the only sign of his thoughts. He handed the lantern over to one of the attending knights behind him and readily left the cargo room. Sir, you mustn't. We can't trust her. Celia, shut up. Shetty, come on. I had thought he was a noble. Apparently he was a much bigger shot than I imagined. I didn't know how he managed to discover my presence on the train so easily. I couldn't continue to stay in this room anyway, so I quietly stood up and followed him. As we got out of the freight car, I realized it was morning already. It felt like it had been a long time since I'd seen the light. As I squinted my eyes, the annoying night woman behind me moved just a step closer. She was grinding her teeth and glaring at me, her sword still unsheathed. She whispered, "Don't think you've won, little bitch. B-roll." Eek. She lost her balance in the shaking train, but managed to put her hand on the wall and stabilized herself before she could fall. So she rode then out. Well, whatever. Doing this was a waste of magic in the first place. The night woman, Celia, right. Her face turned scarlet from the near miss. She finally seemed to have realized the danger of leaving her sword out and sheathed it, her foot stamping at the mark that the tip of the blade left on the train floor, trying to hide it. Let's tattle to the conductor later. The freight car was at the tail end of the train, and apparently Tiz's group was riding the car right in front of it. I saw knights and maids attending as pairs, bowing to Tiz as he walked through the corridor. Looked like he was exactly the other country's noble that I heard about. One car was for 24 people. Each person's ticket fare was 5 small golds, so renting out a whole car would cost 12 large gold coins. Spending 24 large gold coins for a round-trip ticket to go hunting just because he was bored. What deep pockets Tiz had. Other than the guest room, I even saw doors leading to what looked like the toilet in the shower. This sort of train ride was a first for me. Tiz kept on going and entered the guest room, right around the middle of the car. I followed behind him. Celia went in last, then stood in front of the door. The room was approximately 14 square meters. The butler back then was already there, preparing tea. Shetty, sit in front of me. Yeah. My casual reply earned me another scathing wave of bloodlust from Celia. Tiz sat on the single sofa chair in the corner of the room. I moved to sit on the 3-seater sofa opposite him. Just as I did, the butler started pouring tea for the two of us. Come on, talk. First off, how did you know I was there? I did. God had granted me the ability of presence detection to prevent danger from coming upon my lord. Celia cut in, still not yet learning her lesson. So that meant she was a child of God, too. That was how she found me. Okay, I understood that part, but then why did Tiz come? Don't you normally call the train conductor if you think you've found something suspicious? Turned out children of God were surprisingly common. Or maybe their abilities were exactly what brought them to serving nobles. But enough of my musings. Tiz's face was already starting to look veiny from her repeated interruptions. The butler attempted to cool things down. Lady Celia, our young lord is still speaking. Ma, my apologies. I wanted to see the auction in the capital. Things weren't going anywhere, so I admitted my motive. Tiz looked triumphant for a moment, which immediately changed into disbelief as he leaned back on the sofa. What, so you wanted to see the auction so much you snuck on the train to get my help? Why? I told you I'm going to the auction too, didn't I? I didn't know you were on this train, Tiz. Cease your lies. You're obviously here to cheat money out of my lord by using his generous compassion. Filthy plebeian, what other trickery? I have money. I tapped a large gold coin on the table to shut up Celia's yapping, attracting everyone's sight. I was going to buy a ticket, but then I found out some noble had already rented out the whole car. I stared at Tiz in protest. He simply looked amused, and his cocky attitude rose another notch. That's not a problem, then. Gramps, sell one of the car's seats to Shetty here. That makes you an official passenger now. Be grateful. Problem solved. But I wondered why I didn't feel even a bit of gratitude. Boy, that's fine and all. But why are you helping her? It's true your return was a fortunate happening. However, had you not repay her already? Celia vigorously nodded at the butler's words. I was wondering that myself. Why was he trying to get involved with me so much? Under the same gazes from 3 different people, Tiz put on a toothy, savage grin. Because she'll be my girl. Why else? Damn it, Celia, my ears. I was dumbfounded. The harpy behind me was shrieking, and the butler just rubbed his forehead in exasperation. He fixed his glare on Tiz. Boy, the girl's still a kid. What in the world are you thinking? I admit, she has quite fair features, but there is no lack of beautiful women for you to choose from. What about the young lady of Count Sol? The girl I got set up a meeting with. The woman just kept demanding luxuries. I only scared her a little bit, and already she was running away in tears, saying I'm terrible or something. That was terrible. For both of them, in many ways. While Shetty here doesn't even blink an eye. Very impudent, or perhaps I should say she's got guts. I like that. Gotta be less cold though, girl. Screw you, I don't need your opinion. And besides, her age isn't a problem. Just give her 3 or 4 more years. Shetty, did you grow? You're just imagining. He wasn't actually imagining it. My rank up changed a few things about me. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon. High rank, the demon of bewitching mist that dances upon the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 1065 out of 11. Plus 165. Total combat power, 1175 out of 1210. Plus 182. Unique skill, reroll, cyber manipulation. Racial skill, fear, simple identification. Humanoid form, master, specialist packer. Low rank, was now, high rank. I gained quite a bit of magic and combat power. With packer, going from expert to specialist, my storage capacity took a leap. My intuition told me that I was no longer limited to solid objects like before. I could store fluids now. And with humanoid form, getting from adept to master, the texture and feel of my skin was now no longer distinguishable from a real human's, even when examined up close. My skin and hair looked so smooth and glossy I felt like I just went into a beauty salon. Next, and perhaps the most mysterious part, my body of a 10-year-old had grown another 5 centimeters, and I was no longer just a smooth, flat cylinder. I had gained just a tiny bit of a curve. It felt like I had finally managed to return to my real age of 11, I supposed. Really? Well, whatever. Your looks won't be a problem after another 2 or 3 years anyway. Look, Gramps, even among the ladies of nobility, you almost never see skin this white. That's because I was albinic. Honestly, it made me wonder if she had blue blood underneath instead. I couldn't even deny that. I was a demon, after all. I thought that if we can meet again a few years later, coincidentally or not, I'll be whisking her off. I never expected our reunion to be this early. Fate must be telling me to make her mine. No, I hadn't heard anything from this fate whatever person. Celia froze in disbelief. The butler started up his forehead rubbing again. This time, he turned to me. Lady Shetty, may I hear your thoughts? So I noticed the butler had started to use lady instead of just calling me girl now. Is he giving up already? Just how indulgent was Tiz normally? No thanks. I'm grateful you didn't tell on my smuggling. But I'll go my own way once we get to the capital. My clear-cut refusal got Celia beaming, the butler faintly sighing, and Tiz smirking. He leaned forward. The auction's 2 days later. Shetty, do you have the entry qualifications? Qualifications. Treston Kingdom's auction is a very prominent event, on the same level as the Trading Confederation of Dukes. Extremely stringent security. They don't let anyone they don't trust inside. Normal attendees would have to have lived within Treston for at least half a year and paid 10 large golds as deposit just to get in. Do you meet even one of those conditions? You wanted to see the auction so much you snuck on the train, right? My servants would be able to get in just fine, just so you know. So dirty. Adults were so dirty. Oh, don't worry, that's not me hitting on you. You're a packer, aren't you? You'll just be my baggage carrier. How about it? If I had more leeway until the auction, I could try to steal the stone. But apparently, the security was extremely strict. And unfortunately, I didn't have the necessary intel to sneak past the surveillance. There was one thing for certain, however, number 17. Magic stone would be revealed upon the auction day. 23 days of borrowed time left. I wouldn't give up. Understood. All right, that's a deal. Gramps, handle her clothes. Make sure she's fit to walk beside me. I was regretting this already. Author's note, and there's the Be Mine declaration law. By the way, Tiz has a few girls that might be generously called his lovers. He's not a pedo. His strike zone's just wide, from 15 all the way to 35. Children of God are around 1 in 1,000. The chance of encountering one of them is about the same as seeing someone on TV in your town. Just as it's easier to see them near the capital, so can they often be found in the company of nobles. Celia's presence detection consumes a lot of magic, so she can only use it once morning comes. Yep, I knew it. Red looks good on you. Your white skin and hair really make those blood-red eyes pop out. Seeing me in a complete ensemble, Tiz nodded in satisfaction. Thanks, I replied tersely. 22 days of borrowed time left. When we arrived at the station in Treston's capital last evening, we were greeted by over a dozen of Tiz's subordinates and knights. If the whole group had gone, they would have had to rent out the entire train. Looked like whoever handled the whole thing knew how much was too much, which meant it must have been the butler, not Tiz. The day after, which was today, the clothing arrived at the high class inn we were staying at. No one had even come to measure my sizes, yet they all fit perfectly. I was wearing a high-quality looking white peasant blouse with a black, knee-length pleated skirt and black leather ankle boots. And covering all of them was a snug hooded coat in a calming dark red shade. No matter how you slice it, I was pretty much Red Riding Hood here. How had things come to this? I recalled the events of yesterday when I was still on the train. Tiz had gotten bored being cooped up in a train for a whole day, which meant I was in his guest room for his entertainment. Celia was still standing guard in front of the door. On papers, I was his servant, but I didn't care to change my attitude, and Tiz hadn't said anything about it either, which was the last straw that pushed Celia over the edge. She snapped at me. How long do you plan on hiding in that rag? Show some respect. It's sweltering just seeing you still inside that coat even indoor. I wholeheartedly agreed, but it wasn't like I was wearing this because I liked it. If Tiz found out about my ears here, he'd probably burst into laughter and then promptly proceed to enslave me as his toy. Normally, if that happened, I'd just have to evaporate all the train's passengers, but Tiz here had nearly 800 combat power. Even silly Celia had around 400. The other knights had around 200 power too, so fighting them head-on would be quite messy. I suppose the crux would lie in how fast I could deal with Celia first. I looked at her in my deliberations. She jolted in a bit of fright. Wow, what's that look for? I only spoke the truth. Stop it, Celia. You too, Shetty. If it actually comes to blows, I'm not going to stop you too, but you should know she's a magic knight. Despite what you may think, she's quite capable. Tiz interrupted in an attempt to mediate. Is that so? So she was more magical than martial. I supposed her weapon did have some powerful enchantment. She might prove to be a lot more troublesome to me than I first thought. I showed no signs of wanting to make amends, and the same went for her. Then Tiz started speaking, looking like he just thought of a new game. That reminded me, you have quite high magic too, Shetty. And judging from your combat power, you use that magic for spellcasting, right? I didn't think a little girl traveling alone would be weak. Perhaps there's a secret hidden in that coat. He threw a sharp gaze at the part of my head I'd been hiding. I sighed and began my prepared excuse. I pointed to his arms. What do you mean by that? My skin's too white, I'm weak to light. Even this much light indoors already enough to hurt my eyes. The lack of pigment made me quite sensitive to all sorts of light. Unlike before, it was only a trivial problem now, but the lighting in this train, were they magical too, was about the same brightness as modern Earth's. I see. After a few moments thinking, Tiz nodded and promptly rang the bell near his hand. Gramps, make sure there's a hooded coat when you prepare her clothes. A blood red one would be good. Was he messing with me? He was some sort of big shot noble, right? Would this be within his means? Right now, I was helping out with the preparations for tomorrow's auction. I was managing his luggage, which was one of the responsibilities of his servants, even if I was just one on paper. Shetty, can you hide weapons? Weapons? Yeah. The official rules said you're not allowed weapons in. However, there'll be incognito nobles from other countries like me at the auction, plus people from the underworld too. And you can ban weapons, but you can't ban magic. There'll be quite a few attendees secretly armed, as long as it's not too big. By the way, which country's noble are you? Curious. I'll tell you if you become my servant for real. Not really. Just thought you're quite young to be what was it? The current head, right? Well, I supposed. And I'm already 27. I'm not that young anymore. It's not an uncommon age for a family head. I really thought you were younger. Is that so? Right, I see. So there's this thing I heard, that apparently high magic tends to make you age slower. This probably happens less often in commoner families, though. Also, kids grow up quickly, so maybe that's why I thought you suddenly looked older. Yeah, must be. Tiz began comparing the sidearms the knights brought over. Midway through, he seemed to have gotten bored. He picked a few daggers with small magic stones inserted. Let's just get whatever. Pack these, Shetty. I was running out of bandit daggers, so maybe it was about time for a resupply. Well, with my rank up, it's not like I needed weapons anymore anyway. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, high rank, the demon of bewitching mist that dances upon the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 11-0 out of 11-0. Total combat power, 12-10 out of 12-10. Unique skill, reroll, cyber manipulation. Racial skill, fear, simple identification. Humanoid form, master, specialist packer. My power hadn't changed a bit. I hadn't had a single fight after entering the town, after all. And even after booking rooms in the capital's inn, I was pretty much on lighthouse arrest. The only exceptions were whenever Tiz got bored and called for me. His group rented out the whole top and near top floors, while I was given a room in the floor below those two. My room wasn't as opulent as theirs, but it was still pretty much heaven compared to the slum that was the orphanage room packed with bunk beds. I always had an accompanying knight to, as they said, watch over me. On Celia's or the butler's orders, perhaps. Their trust did not come with Tiz's approval, it seemed. Sure, I could disperse into mist and escape from the third-floor windows. However, I thought doing what could be done at the moment was better than simply hunting thugs at night, which would just cause a commotion and make the security even tighter than it already was. And there, sharp, around 3 centimeters claws grew from my fingertips. Their red coloring might be due to me imagining them coming from my body. This discovery came as a result of my experimentation with my mist form, and one of the things I tried was to see if the arms I created while dispersed could have sharp tips or not. I believe these claws came to be because I had wanted a way to fight in human form when I was ranking up. I said house arrest, but I had my hands full with important things like power experimentation and playing with Blopsy, so I didn't mind. However, whenever I came out for food or because Tiz was bored, Celia was always there to glare at me with killing intent. Irritating. Was she jealous? The next day, the day of the auction, Tiz's group was going to leave in the morning. With me, obviously. Tiz would still have his bodyguards until we get inside, where he would be allowed only 3 other accompanying people. Those 3 were the bodyguard Celia, the butler, and finally, me. Celia was expressing her disagreement about my inclusion even until now, which earned her another scolding from Tiz. Then she'd glare at me again. So annoying. The auction was held in a public hall. It looked sort of like a concert hall. I could see the royal castle from here. Don't get yourself lost, Shetty. Yeah, we headed right for one of the second-floor personal booths. Tiz sure was made of money. Right after we sat down, he started talking with the butler about their bidding plans. The yellow magic stone can't be the main show. Indeed, in the end, it is but an unusual magic stone. Likely, it would not be all that expensive. I believe we should focus on getting the Quarensync made elixir instead. And we don't need the artistic stuff. Let's see what's good among the magitools. Shetty, you wanna see too? Tiz noticed me reaching on tiptoes to see the list of items being auctioned. He gave me a spare list, so the yellow magic stone would be the second one in the afternoon. The third one seemed to be a magitool with an interesting effect. I was a bit curious. Celia looked curious too, since she was sneaking peeks from behind me. Hey, you, take it over here, it's brighter. The hall's lighting were off, perhaps to create atmosphere. The tables all had stylish-looking candles instead. Why not just turn on the light? They should have kept them on until the auction started. Are they skimping on magic? Ha, what a bumpkin. This is a royal capital with a sapling. There's no reason to be stingy, especially this place. The hall has a direct magic pipeline from the castle. It'd never have a blackout. I see. So the sapling was in the castle, then. If I remembered correctly, 99 countries formed around the 99 saplings, right? Perhaps the humans had a method to extract and distribute the magic from the sapling everywhere throughout the country. It'd explain the abundance of magical energy that I saw. But that's enough of that. Get us our weapons. Being unarmed makes me jittery. Yeah. We'd handed over our weapons at the reception. Celia was fidgeting. Instead of the new weapons, I gave her one of the dingy daggers I took from the bandits. She scowled, but still took it reluctantly. At that moment, a spotlight shone on the stage. An announcement rang out to signify the beginning of the auction. The magic sword from the Labyrinth of Segel had gone to number 56 with a bid of 10 large gold coins and 1 silver coin. That last silver was really petty. There were a lot of people in the hall, but only around 100 was participating. Morning bids were generally rather calm. The auction would only turn into a true arena for the rich in the afternoon, after lunch break was over. People in normal seats either ate in the dining room or outside. However, apparently booth seats like ours can order food at the dining room to be brought to the table. I couldn't really eat, but my packer level was high enough to store water. I could pretend to chew, then store the food instead. The stored food would be set aside for Blopsy later on. After finishing the meal, I left my seat. Shetty, where are you going? The restroom. Tiz dismissively waved me off. Both Celia and the butler weren't showing any signs they'd follow me. They weren't that obsessive, it seemed. I was finally free to act. I walked out the bright hallway, skipped past the restroom, and went to the back of the hall's ground floor. There, I saw stairs leading to the basement, and another hallway going deeper, which was the right path. I checked out the path leading deeper first, which led me to a metal door with 2 spear-wielding guards standing in front. They stared at me, then knocked the butt ends of their spears on the ground. No one allowed after this point. We won't hold back if you approach any further, guest or not. I see. Indeed, security was strict. Seeing a kid didn't loosen their vigilance in the least. I acted fearful and turned back. It seemed the basement was the right choice, instead. If I forced my way through back there, it'd just raise a huge fuss. So I should do something about the strict security first. The light dimmed as I went downstairs. I saw 3 shadows deep inside. They were playing cards, perhaps slacking off. There, a straight. That's my win. Oh hell, you gotta be kidding. Hold on, are you cheating? Like hell I am. Come on, gimme the 5 silvers. Come on, man, it's right before payday here. I'm broke as fuck. Then how about this? You know we have a few chicks in the slave pen, right? Bring 'em. Well, you sure? No one would know. Worst case scenario, if they get noisy, we can just off them. It's just going to be an apology letter at most. Alright, then Olga. Urgarg. I snuck close in the cover of darkness and choked the men out in just a few moments, draining their life. I saw words on the wall reading magic routing control. Blobsy was left behind to clean up the corpses, while I ran in deeper. 21 days of borrowed time left. I didn't see anyone else on my way to the underground magic routing control room that was supplying power to the hull. I was prepared to eliminate anyone who saw me, but that didn't mean I would happily carry out an indiscriminate mass murder. Still, all the same, I felt like human countries really just weren't for me. I wondered if this distaste came from the discrimination of appearance that I'd been experiencing since forever. It was likely. Nothing would change with just the words of one person. Every humans, down to their children, only ever saw demi-humans as their livestock, as useful beasts. There was no scorn nor disdain to be had here. They were just animals, after all, not people. The kindness the humans showed to demi-human slaves was no different from the care a cowboy showed to his horse. To the humans here, killing cattle was nothing to feel guilty about. I had always wondered why things were this way. The reason for it all lay here. The magic routing control room. Mana overflowing from the world tree's saplings that were sustaining the world was gathered and sent everywhere, including this place. Magic powered the trains and lit up the nights. A resource so vast no one even bothered to turn off the lights. It was just as vital to human convenience as electricity to modern Earth. Number 1. Hands. He had left the following words in his will. The human race, individually weak yet with high reproductive ability, had managed to conquer the whole world by leeching on the saplings. Doubtlessly, the other races with power had seen their weakness, and so they had allowed the humans to cling to the saplings in pity. Yet the humans had discovered a way to utilize the mana. With their newfound power, they had driven all the other races away from the saplings and took them as slaves. And with the knowledge coming from another world, from modern Earth, their power had only grown. This building was constructed with the premise that its magical lights would never be off. So I expected that once the auction hall plunged into darkness after losing its magic power supply, everyone inside would be bewildered. Just candles alone wouldn't be enough light for the people here to fight in. It should be the moment right before number 17 magic stone would be brought on stage, about 15 minutes after the afternoon auction began. After taking out the lights, I would head right toward the stage, kill only the people blocking my way, grab the stone, then make my getaway. This was the most harebrained scheme ever, even if I say so myself. However, I didn't have the time for careful planning. My clock was counting down. My lack of experience would just create a plan full of holes anyway, and most importantly, I'd never even done this sort of strategic thinking before. I was playing this thing by ear. I couldn't afford any delays. It would just put me on the back foot. Alright, let's roll. I dispersed my arm to unlock the control room. With my claws and weapons, I began to turn everything inside into junk. Just what is that fool of a girl doing in the washroom? Tiz muttered in incredulity. The afternoon auction had begun for a while, yet Shetty still wasn't back. Tiz took a sip of spirits. Shall I search for her? Nah, just leave her. She'll come back sooner or later. Tiz looked to be fond of the girl, yet he still showed no concern. He thought the impudent attitude was novel. She might still be a kid, but cute enough to have great prospects later on. Rarely was there someone as white as her, and combined with her red pupils, she looked just like a rabbit. That delighted him. Yet in the end, to him, it was nothing more than a rarely seen coloring. Discovering her was no different from discovering a surprisingly nice knife in a bazaar. Tiz's attachment to her was only the possessiveness of a man who didn't want his thing to run away. People in positions of power like Tiz weren't ones to have a partner out of love in the first place. Appearance and ancestry decided the woman standing beside him, while bloodlines decided the woman who would carry his children. These women might be important people, but he wouldn't obsess over them. Tiz only had 2 fixations, the magical blade he acquired as a child, and the position he achieved by defeating his father. An exotic-looking girl with an impudent attitude and a bit of beauty wasn't enough to earn his infatuation. Just as the first item of the afternoon auction, a piece of jewelry, found its owner and the yellow magic stone was being brought on stage, the light shining on the stage suddenly vanished. What happened? Just a bit of theatrics. Right. The auction originally began in a dark hall with only candle lights in the first place, so the attendees weren't thinking too much. Just a bit of chatter at most. They were yet to aware that this was an incident. The moment I destroyed the equipment, shutting off the light, I thought I heard a voice. But this wasn't the time for hallucinations. I turned myself quasi-mist and rushed through the dark corridors at top speed. Blopsy bounced at me as we regrouped, cheerfully diving into my satchel. Once she was secure, I dashed upstairs. There, I saw some staff members panicking from the sudden blackout. The main doors and windows were letting in more light near the hall entrance, and naturally people gathered there. The staff members were frantically trying to stop the attendees' bodyguards from coming in, saying it was dangerous. I promptly returned to the dark hallway leading further in. Those 2 guards standing watch were leaving the doors ajar, peeking inside to check on the situation. Their eyes weren't used to the dark yet. I returned to humanoid form, again, kicked the ground for a boost, and slipped through between the guards. Former mercenary, race, human male, guardsman, magic point, MP, 84 out of 85. Hit points, HP, 150 out of 150. Total combat power, 306. Something just came in. It's a person. Right at that moment, someone inside summoned a magical light, covering the room in a faint glow. See, my plan was so full of holes. Stop them, the guard shouted. One of the staff charged at me with just his fists. I stepped on his head and flew over. What the hell are you doing? Another man right next to my side swung a crowbar. I blocked it with the dagger in my right hand, while the claws on my left hand sliced at him, crowbar and all. Whoa, my claws actually cut metal. But I didn't even have the time to be surprising myself. I parried the spear stabbing toward me from the front with my dagger and tore apart the guard's throat with my claws. A spear lunged at me from behind. Reroll. I just barely dodged it and instantly responded with a kick. It broke his neck. Damn it, why the hell is this turning into a messy melee? Luckily, my opponents were still unused to the dark. Dodging their attacks wasn't all that difficult, and I managed to win. I knew it, detailed plans just weren't my thing. Some of the staff members were running away. I should head to the stage before this mess got any bigger. But then, a voice called at me from the darkness. Wait, was there still someone left? I turned toward the voice, holding up my dagger. There, I saw 2 kids being bound inside a cage. They looked about the same age as the body I currently had. A boy and a girl. They looked like each other, both having light blonde hair and very fair features. They were only wearing what amounted to sheets with holes cut in for heads, so thin the fabric looked nearly transparent. Their hands were bound in cuffs. Desperate blue eyes looked at me. Elves, yes, please, let us out of here. We hadn't done anything to humans. Hold on, tell me what's going on first. I didn't have time, so I told them to just give me the cliff notes. Apparently, they used to live in a relatively large elven settlement. The settlement had been enjoying a comparatively peaceful relationship with this country by selling traditional handicrafts. However, at some point, the king of this country began to demand a few slaves each year. The settlement could not comply, and diplomatic ties were cut. One day, they were suddenly attacked by soldiers. The men were killed, the treasures taken, the women and children captured. They said they were pacifying a revolution. But your village wasn't even a part of this country, right? Yes, you sure they didn't just want pets to play with? Do you have anywhere to run to? A few of us managed to scatter and ran off. If we could just escape to the forest depths, we might be able to find our friends again one day. Sorry, you're a human. You don't really need to hear this. No, I let my ears slip out a bit from my hood. Their eyes widened. Don't mind me. The most I can do is letting you go. Move away. My claws sliced apart the lock in their handcuffs. I also handed them some spare robes and daggers, plus a few silver coins. This is it. I can't help you any further here. I turned to leave. The girl called after me. Her voice choked in tears. One day, we'll repay you. We swear. The boy still kept silent, his head bowed low. He didn't move even after I'd left their sight. I knew it. I couldn't bring myself to abandon someone I'd talked to. And I still had my own urgent problems to deal with, at that. In front of my eyes or not, I should leave the slaves alone next time. All right, let's sow some more chaos on my way to the magic stone. Who's there? A staff member asked, seeing me dashing out of the dark and into the faint magical light. Looked like they were still unaware of what had happened. Wait, was that the elven treasure that was supposed to come out next after the magic stone? Seeing that I still wasn't stopping, the guardsmen immediately crowded around the treasure. They stabbed their spears toward me without a single warning. Security was honestly annoyingly strict. My combat power was good. My offensive versatility, less so. I was at a disadvantage every time I fought against multiple opponents. Still, high combat power meant higher speed and lower damage received from attacks. With my wish of a combat-capable human form granted, The reflexes and instantaneous power I had when shapeshifted had risen by leaps and bounds. I could even see my opponent's attacks happening, as if in slow motion. I dodged the spears, letting them graze against my shoulder, and leap right into the face of one of them. My dagger tore his throat apart. "Whoa, we have a professional here. Be careful." The guardsmen swung their weapons without hesitation, even against someone who only looked like a kid. A few of them scratched me. I continued parrying with my dagger and slicing throats with my claws. I was still keeping my inhuman nature hidden, and so they were also only using unenchanted, mortal-killing weapons. They still hurt, of course, but the damage was negligible. And I didn't have vital organs like humans in the first place. Snap. My final bandit dagger broke. I'd been handling them. Well, not exactly carefully. One of them took the chance to pierce my stomach with a spear from behind me. Here's our chance. Finish him off. Two guardsmen dropped their spears and unsheathed their swords. The dagger slipped from my fingers. Seeing me impaled, the two men approached without as much care as they should have. I drove two new daggers into their throats, while the guard impaling me cried out. I dispersed my left hand into a tendril, then solidified just the claws to tear off his throat. Seeing the guards all dead in bare moments, the other staff members screamed. Too late. I pulled the spear out of my stomach, then picked up the elven treasure sitting on top of a fancy-looking service cart. If only this was the magic stone I was looking for, I could have escaped right there and then. I took too much time with those elven kids. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, high rank, the demon of bewitching mist that dances upon the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 1095 out of 1310, plus 210. Total combat power, 1226 out of 1441, plus 231. Unique skill, reroll, cyber manipulation. Racial skill, fear, simple identification. Humanoid form, master, specialist packer. I had a bit of hope, seeing how the guardsmen were quite strong, but it looked like another evolution was out of the question so soon after ranking up. Maybe the next evolution would happen at around 1500 or 2000 magic. I'd just have to make do with what I had. My magic dropped, but my base combat power rose, so all in all, my current power hadn't changed. It'd be fine, probably. As I hurried to the stage, I saw a shining yellow stone within the darkness, being surrounded by a few guardsmen. That's it. The stone I assimilated from number 1 was telling me it was what I'd been looking for. Number 17 magic stone. Thief. There's a thief. I heard around 10 pairs of feet running up behind me. Hearing the warning, the guardsmen on stage pointed their spears at me. A commotion was starting up among the attendees, who had been left in the dark until now. I wondered if those kids made it out. I'm not coming to save you again if you get caught, all right. I have my own problems here. A few guardsmen on the stage charged at me. At the same time, I leaped out from the wings, parrying the spears with a dagger while stabbing the closest guard in the face with another. They're fast. Don't use spears, use your swords, one of them shouted, his hands getting ready to switch weapons. His throat got a reroll. Ed thrown dagger. Ag. Eat this. Sword slash. One of the men chasing me slashed at my back. Seemed like the attack was magical, as it hurt quite a bit. I pretended to stagger, slicing at the man's legs with my claws as I was falling down, then stabbing a dagger into his neck the moment I hit the ground. Ice arrow. Oof. Icicle spikes stabbed into my back. Looked like one of them knew magic. Two men took the chance to attack. I rolled away from their blades, then dispersed both my arms into clawed tendrils of mist, shredding their throats. Magic. The darkness continued to be my ally. They thought my attacks were just spells. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, high rank, magic points, 1080 out of 1385, plus 75. Total combat power, 1218 out of 1523, plus 82. The guards stopped their attacks for a moment, cautious of magic. I took the chance to immediately dash toward the stone that was about to be carried off by a staff member. I kicked them away. The stone was flung into the air, and I swallowed it whole without a moment's hesitation. Shetty, race, Mistral, lesser demon, high rank, magic points, 1080 out of 1535, plus 150. Total combat power, 1218 out of 1688, plus 165. Evolution available. The moment one of Tiz's targets, the yellow magic stone, was brought on the stage, the lighting shut off. As they waited in candlelight for the repairs to be done, a sudden commotion started up on the stage. Seeing his fun being spoiled, Tiz growled. "What's going on?" "Sir, I'll go check right away," Celia reflexively responded, then upon further thinking, began to vacillate between whether she should prioritize Tiz's safety or investigate the current incident. Her thoughts were interrupted by someone jumping on stage. I see, a thief. Tiz stood up, his mouth in a savage grin. Then, noticing the lack of weapons on his hips, he scowled. Boy, no need to endanger yourself. This is not your country. You don't need to tell me, Gramps. But Tiz's displeasure soon disappeared. Lit by faint magical lights, the sight of the thief running amok on stage had piqued his fancy. The shadow was small, almost like they were just a child. Their opponents were 10+ grown men. A few attacks hit the thief, yet they still fought without the slightest hesitation, dodging only the fatal blows. Tiz thought the sight was beautiful. He wanted the thief. Still, even if he had no idea what they were after, they surely wouldn't come out of this safe and sound after breaking into this auction. Then the kid leaped toward the yellow magic stone, still faintly shining inside the darkness. Tiz thought he saw the thief swallow it. The noisy attendees, agitated by the battle, immediately quieted down as they felt the thief's presence changing, almost as if the thief had just transformed into something else. The next moment, the stage was abruptly awash with a faint mist. The temperature inside the hall dropped sharply. Seeing that the people in contact with the mist were collapsing one after another, Tiz swung his arm at the stage. Fire lance. A blast of fiery heat washed away the mist on stage. The wind took off the hood of the thief. Lit by the flames, Tiz saw her face and her drooping, rabbit-like ears. Shetty, a demi-human. Is that a beastman? Within the dark auction hall, all eyes were on the stage. The flames revealed a single girl of white, standing alone. With the thief revealed to be the girl who had been with them until now, Tiz almost leaped from his seat. He glared at the girl. Shetty, but was that girl truly her? The first time he met her, he thought she was a 10-year-old kid. The second time, she looked closer to 11. Perhaps his first estimation was wrong. He thought. Nothing more. It was true that kids possessing high magic, as they often did among the nobility, tended to grow up faster. Yet Shetty, standing on the stage, looked as if she had gained another year of age and height within as many days. The little girl was already turning into a young lady. She was showing the first hints of a deadly beauty. However, it wasn't the most eye-catching thing about her. The audience was all staring at the pair of long, snow-white ears softly dangling from her head. There were canine species with drooping ears, true, but the longest among them was only around 10 centimeters. No one had heard of, nor seen, such a species of beastman to have ears so long as to reach her chin. To have ears of a rabbit. So, that girl was a rabbit beastman. Celia's shout echoed within the silent hall. Her words couldn't be clearer. Rabbit, a rabbit, rabbit. Mutters sounded out one by one. As they began to comprehend the words, the attendees ceased seeing her with fear and terror. Desire flooded their eyes. Get me that bunny. That critter is mine. In one of the second-floor booth seats, a chubby middle-aged noble leaned over the railing and screamed. Tiz knew that face. He was the brother to the king of this Treston kingdom. Yet his position did nothing to deter the other attendees, full of the rich and the nobilities of other countries. Prompted by his shout and blinded by greed, they stood up, one after another, and gave orders to their own subordinates. Catch that rabbit girl. No, auction her. I'll pay 100 large golds. My trading firm will secure her. Get the bodyguards in here. Don't fuck with me. That rabbit belongs to Treston Kingdom. This is an auction. Who the hell cares about that? Grab her already. A rabbit beastman. A race hitherto unseen, unheard of. And the girl was a beauty too, at that. She would fetch an absurd price. Dozens of bodyguards were tripping over each other to fulfill their given orders. They flooded toward the stage. Seeing them, the auction host spat out orders to the surviving guardsmen. We're taking her for our auction. Capture her, but don't you dare harm a hair on her head. I'll pay every one of you a large gold coin once she's in my hands. Shetty just blankly stared and blinked. Her scarlet eyes swept through the hall, stopping at the approaching wave of guardsmen and escorts, and narrowed in disgust. All right, just stay calm, Ak. A lithe swordsman was the first one to get up on the stage. Just as his bare hands were about to grab the girl, his movements inexplicably slowed down. The girl dashed in. Her dagger tore through his throat. Then she bounced off. Several bodyguards reached for her, but the moment they came into contact with the mist overflowing from within her coat, their faces rapidly turned blue and their movements dulled. Daggers and claws ripped them apart. Was that white mist some sort of ice magic? The bodyguards realized this was no simple target. Some changed into magic. Some broke apart a nearby chair to make impromptu bludgeons. This might hurt a bit, little bunny. One of the bodyguards quickly changed gears and grabbed a spear from the floor. He spun it, clearing off the mist, then used the pommel to jab at her. Og. Yet despite his seemingly skillful spear handling, the man mysteriously slipped on a patch of frozen blood, losing his balance. The girl grabbed his face. His entire body rapidly turned pale as if the heat was being sucked out of him. In a blink of an eye, white ice covered him whole, and as the final slivers of life left him, the frozen statue shattered. Witnessing the ruthless execution right in front of them and feeling the heat-sapping mist upon their skin, the bodyguards all went pale. They gulped. On the second-floor seating, Tiz was taking in the sight with blazing eyes. He asked the butler beside him, who was staring at the girl while looking just as pale as the bodyguards. Gramps, what the hell is going on? How much is Shetty's combat power? Considering that they were employed by this auction hall, the guards must have their combat skill at level 3. Or as said among the adventurers, they were rank 3. And the attendees here were all either people with deep pockets or were powerful nobility. Their bodyguards must be at least rank 4, like Celia. Perhaps there were even rank 5, fighters as skilled as master knights, among them. Celia was a magic knight, possessing high magic. Her combat power was close to 400. There should be plenty of other bodyguards here who were around her level. Even if they weren't allowed use of their favorite weapons in their capture, and even if they were hindering each other, there should be at least dozens of people above 300 power. It's impossible for them to be having so many casualties to a little girl with only 200 combat power. I cannot identify her. What? Her magic points, her hit points, her total combat power, they're all hidden to my eyes. That reminded Tiz of something. When they were at the Adventurers Guild for her identification, the crystal displayed Shetty's magic as 120 combat power as nearly 200, but no hit points. Only total combat power and magic points were important in combat, so people paid less attention to hit points. Even the guild staff thought it was just an error and ignored it. In hindsight, perhaps it was a sign Shetty was hiding her power. You've done it this time, Shetty. A gust of wind visited the stage, blowing away the clawing mist. Stop right there, villain. Rage colored Celia's face so red she was giving off steam. The knight pointed the dagger in her hand at Shetty. Noticing the woman, Shetty subtly frowned. She silently turned to face the knight. What are you going to do with that dingy knife? You dare say that after you've tricked me so, knave. Celia was glowing crimson now. She slammed the bandit dagger Shetty gave her on the ground. Nothing short of death would redeem the deception you've inflicted on us. Your life ends here by my hand. Really? To Celia's furious declaration, Shetty only responded with a chilly glance. The girl leisurely readied a dagger in her left hand, while her right was hidden inside her coat. Come, Celia was confident. If Shetty was using a water-type mist spell, then she would have the advantage with wind-type spells. Exactly the type of magic she specialized in. So full of yourself with that mist, aren't you? Let's see how you like it when my wind blasts you away, mist and all. Celia smirked. And just like the night woman expected, Shetty charged in while releasing mist from somewhere around her hidden right arm. Celia shot her arms forward. Wind bomb. A burst of air exploded from Celia's hands. Just as she predicted, no. Exceeding her predictions, Shetty blasted off as if she was weightless. The girl smiled and waved. She flew off above the heads of the surrounding bodyguards. Nuwu, don't run away, lowlife. Shetty left Celia's screams behind and leisurely landed back on the ground. Before the bodyguards could regain their senses, she dashed off into the crowd of attendees. The ladies were shrieking and running from her. The merchants were reaching out with greedy eyes. Shetty simply responded with a large cloud of mist, using it to slip through the crowd and dash for the exit. On the way, her eyes met with Tiz's, who was still standing on the second floor. He bore his fangs in a savage grin and declared, "Remember this, girl. I am Tishler, the 12th Emperor of the Empire of Twos, and you will be mine. Just wait for it." Shetty gave no reply. The girl escaped to the front doors and disappeared into the town. The king's soldiers were sent out on searches, but they were unsuccessful. She was no longer in the capital. This was the beginning of a flood of extravagant bounties set by the wealthy and by the nobles of Treston and of other countries. Yet even among them, the bounty set by the hands of the Emperor of Twos himself was head and shoulders above. All within the central continent were aware of the lavish reward. Wanted, a young white-colored rabbit beastman girl, who commands a magical mist. Whosoever will apprehend and deliver the girl shall be handsomely rewarded. The girl must not be harmed. The Emperor of Twos swears upon his name. Whosoever accomplishes this matter shall be given 5,000 large gold coins as recompense. Incidentally, many had expected this event to further aggravate the marginalization of beastmen, yet it was not so. On the contrary, demand for young, pale-colored or lop-eared canine beastman girls surged. They were sold for extremely high prices and granted a life of luxury by their buyers. In the 7th research center of a certain pharmaceutical company, situated within a certain country of Earth, there was a researcher. The head researcher, in fact, even if these days, most of her hours were taken up by secretarial work for the deputy director, Ryan. One of her colleagues had just shared with her an image they thought was interesting. Can't be, but what if? Audrey muttered. The scene was burned into her mind. Yggdrasia, a whole new world presented as fiction, as nothing more than a virtual reality game. So-called players were sent to this world as harvesters of a new form of energy called mana. To lay the foundations, the corporation had begun interfering with the new world's human countries since a decade ago. Temples were built in all of them as mana collectors and as revival points for players. Yggdrasia's humankind believed these were temples of the god of knowledge. In truth, these buildings served as bases for the corporation's staff members and digistructed equipment, for on-site analysis of local peculiarities such as mana and materials, and for surveillance. 100,000 AI-driven, stealth-focused remote-controlled drones were used as scouts and spotters. They flew around the whole world to survey terrains and climates. In seldom cases, a particularly perceptive monster or some other cause might still be able to heavily damage them. All the same, overall performance was good, and Earth received a massive amount of information. Once the drone's AI detected an unusual event, their programming required them to hurry toward the scene and record what they could. The drones at Translator Kingdom, a country in the northwestern corner of the central continent, had detected one such event at the auction hall and had recorded a part of it. Right in front of the deputy director's room was Audrey's own desk. Using an audiovisual-only VR set, she replayed the copy of the recorded data that was sitting in her mobile device. In front of her eyes, she saw a small girl fighting against a large group of grown adults inside the auction hall. The video was filled with a strange white noise, almost like mist or smoke, and the girl's movements were abnormally fast. Audrey couldn't see what she looked like. Luckily, when the girl was sent flying by a wind spell, her side profile appeared on the screen for a split second. And immediately after that, the screen whited out as if the drone was swallowed in mist, and it malfunctioned. The recording data ended there. Audrey's colleague had lamented about the white noise. They thought the fight would have made for a great trailer video, if only the recording wasn't so blurry. But Audrey thought the girl looked familiar, almost like a feeling of déjà vu. She had white skin, white hair, and scarlet eyes, normally characteristics of an albino. Yet with the addition of her long ears, she looked just like a rabbit beastman girl. More than anything, however, glimpsing the side of her face reminded Audrey of a certain girl. Number 13, the final alpha tester, an albino girl born with a special power, who was called a demon by her own mother. Her consciousness was already gone, and her comatose body was being kept in the collection facility. Audrey remembered very clearly the photo attached to the documents detailing the girl's personal information. It's hard to forget that stare. They just looked similar, that's all. Most people would brush off the matter with that. Yet for some reason, Audrey could not separate the rabbit girl from number 13. Still, the woman decided to bury her unease, despite the protests coming from her intuition. After I escaped the auction hall, I quickly blended into the crowd. Bouncy bounce. We didn't stay there for long. The two of us climbed on top of a building and started jumping roofs. An express train was about to leave right at that moment, so I clung to the train's roof. We were out of the capital city. I spent a whole day on top of the train. Once we reached the next town, I got on another train, officially, this time, with ticket bought, before the news about me could catch up, and left the country border. I only needed to give the ticketing office my money, and show them a peek of my adventurer's card, and they let me on. They didn't check on me too closely. I was curious, so until the train arrived, I chatted with the middle-aged woman selling tickets. She seemed like the gossipy type. Apparently, adventurer's cards remembered the holder's magic. If someone else was holding them, for example, a bandit, then the card would show a black mark. It would be unusable. So basically, you would be checked quite meticulously when you entered a large town. But inside, you just showed your card and the guards would let you go anywhere. So sloppy. By the way, I already threw away that conspicuous red hoodie along the way. Obviously, the train I was on was going to the east of Translator Kingdom. Its destination was a small country called Anuf. Saying neighboring country might give the wrong impression. In contrast to countries of Earth, which were densely packed together and covered all the land people could live on, countries here only formed around the extremely convenient world saplings. So there was quite a distance. It would take a whole 3 days of non-stop running for the express train to arrive. Actually, this was pretty much the same speed as a linear motor train, wasn't it? The scenery was just blazing by. Yet even when I opened the window, all I felt was a nice breeze. I wondered if the whole train was covered with a force field. They did have a lot of magic to waste, after all. Well, scenery watching like this wasn't much different from looking through an airplane's window, anyway. Trains that crossed country borders like this one had 8 cars, 3 of them for passengers, 12 rooms in total. Currently there were only 7 groups of passengers, so I had a whole room to myself. From the window, I watched the white-capped mountain range passing by. I could finally take a breather. I took out some food I bought from the dining hall to feed Blopsy, while checking on the results of my evolution. Shetty, race, Mistral Niche, Greater Demon, low rank, the demon of tempestuous mist that ravages the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 1,950 out of 1,950, plus 415. Total combat power, 2,145 out of 2,145, plus 457. Unique skill, reroll, cyber manipulation, absorption, racial skill, fear, simple identification, humanoid form, national treasure, specialist packer. Alright, where do I even start? First off, my class finally reached Greater Demon. My combat power might not look like it grew all that dramatically, but I felt like my attacks had gotten quite a bit heavier due to the higher density, or perhaps I should say thicker mist, that I now had. In other words, a flat power increase. Next, Niche. If I remembered my French right, that meant snow, right? My newly acquired unique skill probably had something to do with it. That yellow magic stone carried within it number 17 power. The unique skill, absorption. If I remembered correctly, the avatar's ability to absorb mana from killed enemies was derived from this power. And as the source, number 17 power was a lot more versatile. In my case, the life force absorption I could do through my mist now went much more smoothly. Not only that, I could now absorb the heat in my surroundings in order to create cold air. My combat versatility would be getting a huge boost just from this change alone. Next, my humanoid form. Once again, this skill was using the weirdest words to describe improvement. This was better, right? What the hell did it mean by national treasure? What sort of evaluation was this? As always, my insides were mist. On the surface, however, I looked 100% human. Absolutely no difference. I grew in height, too, perhaps due to my higher density. Upon first gaining a body, I looked about 10 years old, at about 135 centimeters. My next growth put me at 140, and now I was around 145. But it wasn't just the height. A few parts of me, such as my cheeks, got a bit of a touch-up, and I was looking more feminine. Did the increase to national treasure have something to do with it? I looked like a perfectly normal 12 years old kid. But the ears, the thrice-damned ears, and the puff of tail, too. No wonder I kept getting mistaken for a rabbit beastman. And surprises after surprises, 'tis turned out to be an emperor somewhere. I even got a weird declaration from him. Was it just because I was a rare rabbit race? Well, not like I knew how serious he was, anyway. Now that I thought about it, there was a very real possibility people would put out a hit for the killer rabbit after that rampage. I wasn't sure how developed this world's information network was, but maybe I should leave before border control noticed me. In this respect, I was really lucky to have gotten the elven treasure when I did. It looked like a pretty silver necklace. Supposedly, this was a magitool. According to the explanation on the auction listing, it helped the wearer gain control over the presence they emitted. No wonder it was an elven treasure. The race was full of hunters, after all. Upon seeing what it did, I thought perhaps it could hide me from identification. 2. If my hypothesis was right, identification didn't simply pull information about the target out of nowhere. The names I saw when I used the skill changed all the time, after all, so it must be relying on the user's observational and detection skills to output the numbers. In which case, if I could hide my presence well enough, would it be enough to fool anyone trying to identify me, too? At the very least, they wouldn't think I was a demon even if they were suspicious of me. Maybe this was the treasure that those elven kids said was stolen from them. Still, it wasn't like I could give it back to them now, anyway. So, plans for the future. I'd need to start gathering information about the final magic stone, the one belonging to number 8, once I could get inside Anuf safely. 20 days of borrowed time left. If it was on another continent, I'd be so dead. Still, the three of them agreed to meet up with each other. They had to be on this continent. Let's see, the fastest way would be, it'd be making contact with beta players. I could tell them the truth, but I didn't think they'd believe me. Number 1, story was only barely believable to me due to his, and my own, desperation. Also, if those corporate people found out I was number 13, they might decide to get rid of my body on Earth. So I'd need to hide what I knew. I'd need to make contact with the beta players as a native, or in their eyes, as an NPC. To be honest, even I thought my plans were really haphazard. Well, not like this was a new thing to me, anyway. Even if I acquired the information, if my target was far away, I'd be needing more travel expenses. Gotta earn money, too. What a pain. I only had 1 large gold and 3 small golds left from the money I took from those traffickers. I only had a coat, which I was wearing over my blouse and skirt, and a robe left as my spare clothes. I wanted some more clothing, too. So many things to do. 2 days later, the train arrived at a port town that was the gateway to the country of Anuf. I escaped as mist before border control came to inspect the train and disappeared into the town. VR chat boards of the MMORPG, World of Yggdrasia. Here, discussions continued just as they always have been. Right, so have anyone else heard about how the beta test's going to end earlier than scheduled? Really? Man, that sucks. I just got to rank 3 recently. Things were just getting good. Come on Opus, that's ignoring a lot of the facts. To be more precise, the official release is coming out early. Aren't they the same thing? It's not the end of the beta test. The test continues into the official release. Announcement said we can either keep our characters or make new ones when it's out. Shit, I can't decide. It's a waste to just delete this character after all my effort, but at the same time, I know how to spend stat points better now. And I wanted to fix up my looks a little bit, too. LOL, y'all spend too much time in character creation. Why not petition the devs for a one-time appearance editor? By the way, you think it's a quest. What is that super extravagant bounty issued by Two's Empire? Limited to the central continent, though. Oh yeah, that bounty in the Adventurers Guild board. That's for real. Guys, deets, I've been holing up on the mountain killing orcs these days. Haven't gone back to town. Wait, you mean the bounty that has its own chat room? The searching for the bunny girl room. It's actually a thing. I heard rumors saying the bounty's 5,000 large golds or something. 5 fucking thousands. Yeah, that. The quest where you're supposed to find and capture the only living rabbit beastman girl left. I just had a great idea. Then don't say it if you don't want a police visit. Anyway, maybe it'll turn out to be a choices matter kind of quest. Like, by the end of the quest you can choose to either turn her in for the money, or you can get a cute bunny girl as a party member. That sort of thing. First off, is she actually cute? No idea. Supposedly, the magic stone that the European players got from the Subdue the Berserkers event, and then auctioned off was stolen by her. So there's a high chance it's actually a quest chain. Oh crap, so that magic stone was actually that expensive. Apparently the high bounty's not because the stone was valuable, it's because the bunny girl's super kawaii. I heard that the players who auctioned the stone off didn't actually attend, and that they're now kicking themselves over it. They got some compensation from the auction host, though. A whole 10 gold coins. Wow, I get your sarcasm. But honestly that's still a lot of money. Maybe we shouldn't auction ours off. Whoa, what? You have an event magic stone. We got a red magic stone from the toad in the trailer. Our clan's been considering where to sell it. But maybe we can use it as bait for the bunny girl. A big clan. Then I suppose it's fine. Still, don't talk about it here. You might get people trying to steal it. It's probably fine. Our clan only have around 10 people, but half of us are rank 4. The leader's a decent guy, so we have pretty good relations with the other clans. The problem is, if getting the bunny girl to be a companion turns out to actually be possible, our group might fracture from a difference of opinions. So which choice are you going for? The recruiting option, obviously. Seconded, thirded, fourthed, guy players. Yeah, I want to dress her in a real bunny girl outfit and set her to work at our clan hall. I hope I never get a boyfriend like you guys. So typical. Girl players. 18 days of borrowed time left. I could see the corner that I was being pushed into getting closer and closer. Normally this would be the point where I would start to either panic, give up, or get reckless, but I didn't come this far just to get a breakdown. Besides, I couldn't let that corporation get off scot-free now. I'm going to show them. I needed to survive first, though. Anuf was a nice-looking port town. White buildings ascended in steps along gently sloping streets, all roofed with red bricks in a consistent theme. Despite the distance from the equator, this country was still comfortably warm, thanks to the sapling. There was a castle on the highest point of the town. At first, I thought it belonged to the lord of this area. After checking on the guide map board, it turned out it was the king's. Wow, so a small country was really small compared to a large one. Were the international trains only stopping at the capitals? I walked around, checking on a few different bulletin boards. Looked like fishing was the main industry of this country, and their specialty was a type of fish similar to herrings. The street-side stalls mostly sold sandwiches, which were pickled raw herrings and potatoes between slices of rye bread. Even if I could actually eat, I wouldn't buy those. Or it might be surprisingly tasty. Who knows? Bounce. Hey, Blobsy, you wanna eat that? My conclusion was that the Adventurers Guild was my best chance for information. Would I have to actually buy one of those pickled herring potato sandwiches just to get a chance to ask where the guild hall was? A few moments into my deliberations, I heard a commotion starting up on the other side of the street. I saw about 10 knights, or maybe soldiers, all using pommels of their spears to bludgeon 2 screaming persons in adventurers' equipment. The pair were then arrested and taken away, toward the direction of the castle. What happened? I got curious. I decided to buy a herring potato sandwich from a nearby stall, and asked the owner about it. They scowled, looking toward the arrested pair, then sighed. They were making a fuss at another stall, demanding the owner to release the demi-human slaves that were working there. He refused, obviously. Then they started speaking gibberish. I think it was, let's see, just a fucking NPC, or something like that. After that, they pulled out their weapons and started threatening him, which got the guards coming. I see. I suppose they meant NPC. So those 2 were beta players, then. They looked young, enough so that I couldn't determine whether they were kids in real life or if they were just idiots. Really, even if this was an actual game, which it wasn't, that didn't mean players would get an automatic pass to do anything they wanted. No wonder they got arrested. There'd been more and more of those weird adventurers recently. Apparently even the guild was having a headache. Like hiring a veteran adventurer to be their guide and then skipping out on the payment, or buying up all the young slave girls, etc. They caused a lot of trouble, I hear. How they did that. And this time, they're even demanding freedom for the demi-human slaves. Is this some new sort of thievery? Honestly, the demi-humans were getting more clever these days. It's getting so much more difficult buying new replacements. Demi-humans really were just considered possessions here. I asked for the location of the guild hall and started walking there. From the train station to the main street was a short walk, and from the main street to the guild hall took a bit longer. It was a 4-story block of pure whiteness. I didn't enter the guild hall right away. Nearby was a shop selling adventurers' equipment, which I visited first. I saw a few adventurers browsing around inside. I went toward the corner selling cloaks and coats, trying not to draw any attention to myself. I started searching. It needed to be tough and looked nice too, if possible. I did also want some clothes, but maybe I should wait until I passed another growth spurt. Deferred, then. Let's get some sturdy boots instead. Honestly speaking, I was already nearly outgrowing the pair I currently had. With targets decided, I started looking. I wasn't left alone. However, fashion in this country isn't really all that good, don't you think? A blue-haired adventurer, looking around 20, just decided to talk to me out of nowhere. Terrible designs, and they don't even have the variety in colors to make up for it. At least the large countries have more stores too. Sally, she's not a player. So-called Sally was interrupted by a new face. A man, halfway into his 20s. Sally stared at me. Oh, wow. She really doesn't have the player's mark. Apparently they were players, and only players could see who else were players. That's fine and all, but I really wished she'd stop it with the staring. I didn't think the corporation was monitoring all 10,000 players, but it'd still be a lot of trouble if players were suspicious of my face. I stayed quiet. I moved a few steps away, hiding my face with the hood. The man cut in between us. I told you, stop it. This game doesn't use any ordinary AI. I'm not going to help if you get arrested and your character deleted, alright. The man turned to me. Sorry about that, he said, sounding not particularly sincere. But I mean, I thought she was a real person, wearing those clothes. They weren't caring much about keeping meta talk away from NPCs, it seemed. I never expected my choice of clothing was what nearly gave me away. I'd been wondering what would happen to arrested players. Apparently the corporation would just delete them. To the locals, the crime would go forever unsolved. I vaguely remembered this being explained to me in the very beginning, I think. No, I don't mind. I dismissed their concern with a light shake of my head. The man left the store, dragging Sally behind him. Nothing happened, thankfully. I sighed in relief, because really, that guy was actually quite strong. Warrior-ish man. Race, human male, player. Magic points, 150 out of 150. Hit points, 260 out of 260. Total combat power, 1,110. 'Tis would eat his dust. I suspected that the system governed players could grow more efficiently than the natives of this world. They had no areas they were weak in. They didn't even need to worry about learning how to handle weapons, nor did they need to manually train up their skills like the natives. They just needed to absorb magic power. Sure, I grew quite strong myself, but if the players could grow the same way, group battles might become the death of me. Still, I couldn't stop here. I'd come too far. I changed into a decent enough coat and pair of boots, paid for them, and left. The guild hall was across the street. No one bothered to make trouble for me in broad daylight, thankfully. Slipping inside the hall, I saw over a dozen idle, loitering adventurers. There were a few who looked like they might be players, too. Why were there so many of them now? There was barely any in the last country I was in. Most of them were crowding around the bulletin board. I glanced at it. Looked like a bounty or something. Wanted, a young white-colored rabbit beastman girl, who commands a magical mist. Whosoever will apprehend and deliver the girl shall be handsomely rewarded. The girl must not be harmed. The Emperor of Two swears upon his name. Whosoever accomplishes this matter shall be given 5,000 large gold coins as recompense. What in the name of all things holy was 'tis doing? 5,000 large golds for my capture. Was this guy an idiot? The crowding adventurers were all hyped. They weren't even talking about where I could be or how to capture me. They were only chatting about the things they would do after they got the money. Still, this was just a distraction. I needed to find Umber 8 magic stone. I secured my hood, then approached one of the idle reception counters. Behind it was a man neck-deep in documents. He looked just like the quintessential public servant, in both appearance and impression. Can I buy information here? Oh, yes. What would you like to know? The receptionist looked up. He looked nervous, despite his polite speech. I'm looking for a magic stone. It looks like a gem. Apologies. We're not aware of any such stone, he replied, then returned to his documents. He didn't even bother to check the records. Was it because the guild didn't deal in such information? Or did he not want to bother with me because I looked like a kid? As I mulled over what to do next, I heard a frivolous voice calling at me from behind. Oh, you knew about the stone. Are you joining the event? Author's note, at this point, the corporation was still not putting much focus on the magic stones, and neither were they aware of our little bunny. So this isn't actually an official event. It's just players merrymaking all by themselves. Native people always have some stats they're weak at, but not players. The system allocates harvested mana in the most efficient way, so players will grow stronger than native. The higher the level, the more obvious the difference. Oh, you knew about the stone. Are you joining the event? I turned around. Standing there was a blonde-haired man. He was good-looking, but he also looked like such a sleazy skirt chaser it ruined the whole impression. 2 daggers were dangling on his hips. Event. Magic stone. Were they players, then? I slightly raised my vigilance and moved back half a step. That got him flustered. He waved his hands and stepped back. No, sorry, didn't mean to scare you. We just put out an announcement, and I was worried no one would come, so when I heard magic stone I just reflexively called at you. My name's Weed. I'm a member of the clan that announced the event. Tell me more. I played dumb in an attempt to glean some information. But wait a minute. I thought the beta players could distinguish between NPCs and players. Well, whatever. For some reason, he seemed interested in my face. He continued his explanation while constantly sneaking glances at my hooded head. Supposedly, their group thought Tiz's bounty was a game event. They also possessed the red magic stone they got from killing another one of us in that event. And since they knew the rabbit beastman girl stole the yellow magic stone, they were planning to use theirs as bait to lure me out. Around tomorrow, there'll be a notice saying finding buyers for the red magic stone posted in all the central continent's adventurer guilds and a few other places. But with such a high bounty, we weren't really expecting the bunny girl to show up inside the town. It's really just people gathering up for a party. So yeah, I was hoping more girls could come. Hey, Weed. Another interruption. Such deja vu, both of us turned to look at the voice. There, I saw the powerful adventurer I met in the armor shop. Sally was behind him, facepalming and going crap. Oh hey, Isaac, I was just inviting this girl. No, she's not a player. Why? Holy shit, she doesn't have the mark. Weed stared in shock, alternating his gaze between me and a spot slightly to the upper left of me. This again. Yes, I got it. Now could you please stop looking at my face? I mean, she just looks so natural. I know, right? Like, the atmosphere she has, her mannerisms, they're all a lot more similar to us than the in-game NPCs here. Weed began his excuse, which was then overwhelmed by Sally's own weight. Actually, Sally sounded a lot like Celia. So easy to mix up. Both of them continued their incomprehensible to NPCs rants. The powerful adventurer, Isaac, was it. Deeply sighed and turned to me. Again, sorry about that. You don't really understand what they're saying, right? Don't mind them, just forget about it. Well, about that. I heard you're baiting the rabbit in the bounty. I asked. Isaac's smile twitched. Weed, what the hell have you been saying? Ooh, everything. Damn it, didn't I tell you? This game's AI has way too many dialogue and action patterns. Don't be careless. But, I mean, you're talking a lot of meta stuff in front of her too, aren't you? They really weren't very vigilant at all in front of NPCs, were they? Isaac's been ignoring me until his friends finally pointed out his own mistake. Whoops. Once again, he turned his strained smile back to me. Oh well, so I see you look quite young. But I guess you're an adventurer too, right? I nodded. Isaac seemed to have finally shaken off his hesitation. He spoke up for both me and his comrades to hear. As you heard, we're about to go on a rabbit hunt. The chances are low though, so it's really half serious, half an excuse to get together and have fun. There's no guarantee we'll get rewarded even if the capture's successful. Still, if you don't mind us hiring you, we can pay you 3 small golds. How about it? Hiring. Apparently Isaac had decided to bring me along under his employ. Why? Whoa, for real. Hell yeah. We cheered. Hold on, Isaac. Are you really bringing this this girl along? Isn't she a stranger? Sally, too loud. What if she talked to other adventurers, and then they come to mess things up? We're bringing her along to keep it secret from the normal adventurers, Isaac replied. I suppose. Awesome. Learn your lesson already, weed. Hey, alright, let's go. Looked like they never even entertained the possibility that NPCs could refuse. Can't be helped, I supposed. If anything, this was actually better for me. I didn't know what sort of event they were going to set up, but as long as I could get my hands on the red magic stone, it'd be fine. It was number 8 stone. Right. Should be. Otherwise I'd be so screwed. Well then, let's talk about our schedule. According to Isaac, the event would be 1 week later. He had already notified his friends through the internet. Anyone who could come was welcome too. It would be held at their base in the outskirts of the free city of Sais. They showed me the spot on the simple map posted inside the guild hall. It was hella far away. It was a large country on the eastern end of the central continent. I wondered how we were going to get there in just a week. Isaac explained. First off, the group would go by slow rail to a nearby large country called Batrol, switching trains along the way. This would take 4 days. Then once we were there, we'd take the airship. An airship? Yeah, we have a yearly pass. I think we can get them to accept you as a party member. This was the first time I'd ever heard of airships. According to them, only the large countries had the necessary airports, and you could go to any other large country in the world in just 1 to 2 days with it. Until Batrol, we'd just be riding normal trains, not express. They said they were here to earn some money in the first place. Wasting large gold coins for a quick ride would just be defeating the purpose. We got on the cheapest train we could find. A bit tight, but still we managed to find a 4-person room. We finally had time for proper introductions. We were hunting the water lizards in the bog nearby. Their hides and magic stones fetch a pretty good price in the free city. So what's your name? I'm Sandria. Just call me Sally. Hi, Sandria. I'm Sherry. The group composed of Isaac the warrior, Weed the speedy fighter, and Sandria the magician. Of course, I wasn't naive enough to use my real name here. The fake name wasn't all that different, since I needed to be able to respond to it quickly enough if someone called me. For some reason, Sandria pushed her beaming smile right next to my face after hearing my greeting. Sally is fine. Hi, Sandria. Really, just call me Sally. Hi, Sandria. I really didn't want to confuse her with silly Salia. And before I knew it, my insistence had already prompted Isaac and Weed to start calling her Sandria too. She was appalled. Miss Sandria, I can hear you whispering dumbass AI over there. Whisper quieter. What will you do about food? I asked. We'll just grab whatever in real ouch. We have something to eat. Don't worry about it. Isaac elbow jabbed Weed for his careless words. On the train, I still went and bought food for Blobsy's consumption from the cafeteria to keep up the ruse. On the other hand, despite being inside a train car, the group sometimes disappeared. So they were logging out to eat then. There were times when Sandria disappeared for a whole 12 hours, even times when only one of them remained in the game. Weed was mostly here. He was here too often. I worried for his real life. It's nice, just the 2 of us alone like this. Hey, Sherry, anything you want to know about me? For a cutie such as you, I'll answer any question you have. Then, how do I delete you? You have a surprisingly sharp tongue. He was constantly, annoyingly attempting to start up conversations, plus his eyes actually felt kind of dangerous. So I shut him down every time he started talking. Then, once in a while, he would stop moving and stared into empty air. So there's this NPC girl who's super frosty to me. A closer look revealed that his lips were barely moving. Maybe he was chatting with someone somewhere. Honestly, were they even trying to fool me? I suppose that in the end, this was just a game to them, and I was just an NPC. After seeing me unresponsive to anything meta, they kept getting more and more careless, and their logout times became more and more frequent. It wasn't really a problem for me, since I had no plans to make friends with them. All the same, even when they knew the NPCs here were acting just like real living people, they still wasn't treating me as one. Even until now, I could see this causing all sorts of issues. Good luck, game moderators. Not like it's my problem though. And on the day before we reached Batrol's first station, the three of them finally logged out at the same time. It seemed they'd been grinding their magic skills on the train, but it wasn't enough to distract themselves from the boredom. As they disappeared, I noticed a strange pool of mana on the floor. It had a protecting barrier. It was probably marking the spot for their subsequent login. I carefully tested out a bit of cyber manipulation on it, subtle enough that the corporation wouldn't find out. As I did, I got a response similar to my hacker skill. After some deeper snooping, I found some equipment that could be accessed through my own hacker skill. They looked like they belonged to the three. This was a welcome surprise. Even if I couldn't take them out, it might still be possible to play a bit of a prank. An hour before the train reached the first station, the three finally reappeared. All right, finally here. I can't wait for the sky trip. Yeah, the game's so worth it just for the sightseeing alone. Sandria and Weed immediately crowded the window. They had completely turned into gawking tourists now, entranced by the view of farmlands, villages, and the approaching town. Only Isaac was still in his seat. He seemed concerned, seeing me staying so still. Were you fine alone? Yeah, I acted the part of an obedient NPC. He relaxed and whispered under his breath, yeah, of course, I suppose there wouldn't be a problem when you're an NPC. If only I was just a normal player. Too late now. I was neither a player nor a native of this world. I had become something in between. The moment that corporation betrayed all 100 of us, players were no longer our allies. Isaac, race, human male, player, magic points, MP, 150 out of 150, hit points, HP, 260 out of 260, total combat power, 1110. Sandria, race, human female, player, magic points, MP, 190 out of 190, hit points, HP, 135 out of 135, total combat power, 790. Weed, race, human male, player, magic points, MP, 140 out of 140, hit points, HP, 180 out of 180, total combat power, 665. 14 days of borrowed time left. I could see the end of the line. Better be prepared, you three. Sooner or later, you'll become my meal. Author's note, I heard the old meme "how do I delete you?" That used to be popular back in the day actually gets an answer nowadays. Slight exposition. Player storage. When players died, they dropped their equipment on the ground, except for event items. As mentioned in the story, the logout spot will be marked, and their items would be stored inside it. Then why were players not allowed to use hacker normally? Because maintaining the marked storage requires a bit of mana. Generally, the chance of players recovering their items were low, so for the purpose of economizing mana use, the game developers decided to remove the ability entirely. That's the airship. That is amazing. After arriving at a town on the western end of Batrol, we hopped on another train to go south. We reached the airport. I thought there'd be trouble with border control. Thankfully, we were riding the slow train, which had a surprising amount of passengers, I should add, and not the express train. Since the slow train didn't directly cross borders, customs was less strict. The leader, Isaac, just needed to present his adventurer's card, and the other party members only needed to show that they also possessed their own cards, and we were in. They really should have checked all of us. The officers probably found it too troublesome. So, back to the airship. It really was incredible. The most incredible thing about it was that it actually looked like a ship. 60 meters long, 20 meters wide, made out of steel and wood, with 8 propellers that were obviously much too small to drive a ship of that size. Yet it flew as fast as a jet airplane. Magic was awesome. The cheapest ticket was 1 large golds and 5 small golds. The top floor rooms were 3 large golds, so the cheapest ticket would be around the same price as riding an express train, right? Sadly, no. They weren't tickets for the whole ride. They were tickets for a single day of stay. If you were traveling within a single continent, a day was enough. Crossing continents, however, doubled the price. Basically, you were paying for a flying hotel room. Isaac's group's yearly passes only allowed them to stay in the bottom twin room. If they wanted, they could upgrade their rooms with an extra fee. Their yearly passes also allowed me to get a party member discount, but not a free ride. I still needed to pay 1 small gold as the bed-making service fee. By the way, Isaac paid it for me. Just as I was about to say my thanks, I found out they got the yearly passes as the reward for killing us. Screw you, then. No gratitude for you. Sandria and Weed impatiently jumped aboard. The two flitted around, going from frolicking on the top deck to watching the ground zip by in the observation deck at the bottom of the ship. I thought they were familiar with flying already. They acted like children, By dinner time, though, all three of them disappeared into their rooms. Our rooms were separated into the guys and the girls. I checked on mine and didn't see Sandria there, so she must have logged out. Food was already included in the fare. I didn't want to waste the luxurious meal, so I cleaned it all up with Blopsy. Boing boing, you liked it. Good for you. I didn't need to sleep, and neither was there any point in just sitting alone inside my room. I decided to go to the top deck to check out the night view. The ship had a protective bubble. Despite flying through open air at super speed, the most I felt was just a comfortable breeze. I secured my hood, just in case, and watched the far-off mountain. According to the guidebook, that was Mount Leonard. It was the tallest mountain in the central continent, as well as home to one of the most prominent mines. Surrounding it were three large countries, which included Batrol. Their conflicts over the mountain's rights were unending, apparently. I suppose that's how it goes. Even if Mana already satisfied all their basic needs, wealth was an entirely different matter. As I watched the night mountain going farther and farther away, I felt a magical signal behind me. So you were here. Yeah, looked like only Isaac came to check up on me. He seemed quite the earnest person. He was holding 2 steaming copper cups. He handed one to me. Thanks, I said, receiving the cup. He smiled and took a sip of his own drink. No problem. So players couldn't eat, but they could drink. For me, everything would need to go to Packer storage after a few pretend swallows and disposed through Blopsy later. And what was this stuff? Thick, green, hot kale juice, I murmured. Isaac besides me spat out his own mouthful of hot kale juice. Wait, hold up, what did you just say? I mean, this stuff is. It's spinach soup for a midnight snack. Oh man, that was so out of left field. I never expected kale juice to also be a thing here. I shouldn't have said that. Let's just gloss over the matter and drink the soup. As was my habit when I was still human, I started blowing on the hot cup. Isaac stared at me. So this isn't about the thing those two talked about earlier. But Sherry, you really don't act like an NPN native of this world. You say that as if you're not a person of this world. I counterattacked. No, I mean realizing his gaffe, Isaac stumbled on his words. Yet immediately after, a faint smile returned to his face. He looked like he had just thought of a funny joke. Well then, what if this world was fictional? What would you do? So he was going for that. He believed that I was a programmed NPC living in a fictional world, who was completely ignorant of games. Maybe he thought he was just playing a little prank, like telling a white lie to an innocent kid. All the same, I looked him in the eyes and fired his question back at him. In that case, if this world was real, what would you do? That took Isaac completely by surprise. A few moments of speechlessness later, he turned his eyes to the night scenery. He smiled. Then it'd be great. Just look at this view, this land. If we could visit this place, just the touring industry alone would bring in so much money. And if we could transport the resources here back, our problems would be solved. We could send our increasing population here and utilize the cheap labor of this world. Sorry, I got lost in thought. I forgot it probably just sounded like gibberish to you. Midway through, he realized what he was saying and noticed my stare. He apologized. He wasn't a bad person. On Earth, he probably would be one of those successful, conscientious people you often see. From Earth's viewpoint, what he said wasn't wrong. But that sort of thinking was no different from the humans here, Yggdrasia's humans, who thought of demihumans as nothing more than just resources. This was the moment I saw one of my choices closed itself forever to me right in front of my eyes. The choice of talking with the players. The path of mutual understanding. 12 days of borrowed time left. We arrived at the free city of Sais. As this was Isaac's home country, he just needed to finish up a bit of paperwork to allow us in. Customs were way too loose. We rode a few more slow trains to get to a town to the north, where Isaac's base was. Just as with the Trading Confederation, the free city of Sais was ruled neither by kings nor nobles. A council of merchants and the landowner made all the decisions. The Trading Confederation was a country of merchants, for merchants. In contrast, the free city of Sais put power into adventurers and their guild. I first thought we'd be going to the base after setting foot into the town. Turned out their friends came to meet us, and we'd be going to the meeting place for the party next. Hey, who's that girl? The leader's hobby. Stop that, Sherry's my girl. I just can't get enough of her abuse these days. They noticed I wasn't a player and started teasing Isaac. And then for some reason, we'd asserted his ownership and his dangerous fetish. Isaac's friends numbered around 10. I guessed one of them had the magic stone. No way to determine who at the moment, though. And what if they already took it to the meeting place? Then revealing myself here would be a terrible idea. According to their chatter, some of the more impatient people were already gathering there. Apparently, the get-together would be held in the rural village that was near the large grassy plains to the north of Sais. The plains was home to a kind of monster called behemoths, about as large as elephants. Their plan was to hunt the behemoths, raise their skills, and have fun while waiting for the bunny to show up. When we reached the village, I saw 5 parties of around 30 people already there. They were starting up the behemoth hunt. Isaac's party looked through the crowd. When they reached a certain group, they all winced. Damn it, even the unwelcome ones came. Once our group showed up, the other participants came by for peaceful greetings. Among the hunting parties, one wasn't actually hunting, instead only torturing the docile herbivores to death. And they were going toward us. Who are they? I asked someone nearby. The answer I got was an evasive one. They're bad people, I suppose. In short, they were people role-playing villainous outlaws. Characters who committed crime and were taken into custody would be deleted. On the flip side, as long as you weren't arrested, playing as a bandit or thief wouldn't be against the game's rules. Still, I felt like I'd already met that group somewhere. Hey, so it's first comes, first serve when the bunny shows up, yeah. No, there's a chance this is a quest chain. If possible, we should all help with capturing her. Then we'll decide. Who the fuck cares? Fucking hell, we should have gotten the airship pass back then if it wasn't for that white fucker. If the bunny shows up, we'll fuck that little shit up. Right, I remembered now. That time when I assimilated number 1 magic stone, there was a party trying to killsteal. This guy was the leader of the party I killed last back then. So they were still doing this sort of stuff, I see. They were terrible people, but whatever. I needed to focus on finding out who had number 8 magic stone. I began to fumble around with cyber manipulation. While I was focusing on watching for any reactions from the players, suddenly, someone grabbed my hood from behind. I jolted. Why the hell's an NPC kid here? Did you bring her in case the bunny doesn't show up? Will we get to hunt the kid instead? He cackled. Stop it. She's an adventurer we hired. Tunnel vision. Damn it. There were too many players around. I didn't detect the thuggish leader approaching. Isaac panicked and tried to stop him. The thuggish leader took a look at him and then exploded in another bout of laughter. What, did you buy her to service you? Man, this game really is the shit. I can even kill the slaves I bought and no one would even bat an eye. He really was so annoying. Shut up already. The NPC girl growled. The hell are you, Bradog? Just as the player holding her was about to turn to violence, 2 daggers slashed into his arms. Cardi was his name. He wasn't so much a villainous role player as he was simply self-indulgent. Infamously so, with myriads of complaints lodged against him. His words, his actions were all far beyond the pale. Yet still, as long as he wasn't violating the game's clauses, he was untouchable. If Isaac's group interfered, it would be they who were infringing upon the rules, so they couldn't do anything. And it seemed like the NPC girl they brought along finally snapped. The thug was still holding onto her hood even with wounded arms, so she tore it off herself and slashed at Cardi with terrifying speed. A strange coat of mist suddenly appeared on her, freezing the hooligan. "D-damn you, die already," she said frostily. Her dagger bit deep into his face. When players received overwhelming damage, their senses would be cut off to prevent traumas. But as he was, the sight of death staring in the face was more than enough to terrify Cardi. With his face set in a rictus of fear, he disappeared in motes of light. The mist lightened by a fraction, no longer hiding the girl from the players' eyes. They saw snow-white hair, scarlet eyes, and gently drooping rabbit ears. The players were all frozen in shock at the abrupt reveal. Isaac let loose a whisper. Sherry. Isaac, sounding miles away, let slip a whisper. My temper drove me to a short-sighted retaliation, and I inadvertently killed him. Still, I didn't regret it. Despite their plan, the players never thought I would actually show up. They gaped at my ears under the torn hood. The corporation seeing me and making the link to the real me would be the worst-case scenario here. Still, with only my face, I didn't think they'd come to that conclusion right away, especially when I now had rabbit ears. So I tried to hide myself as much as I could. I was only keeping my current human form skin deep. My insides were turning into mist, slowly covering the area. Among the players, Isaac had the highest combat power. The lowest of them were about 300. The dangerous ones were Isaac's clan members, who were all above 400. I readied a dagger, staying alert while wondering who among them had number 8 magic stone. Then Weed, recovered from his shock, frantically jumped out. Sherry is the bunny. Awesome. I must have gotten so many relationship points already. Here, jump into my arms. Silence descended on the field. What the heck? That was so far out of expectations, I couldn't help but grimace. On the other hand, Weed's idiocy instead brought the players out of their stupor. It's the bunny. She's really here. They clamored, hands moving to their weapons. Isaac frantically ran out in an attempt to stop them. No, stop. Let's try talking with her first. Sherry, you, hunt the bunny. Yeah. His plea was drowned out by the villainous leader's party. They charged at me with weapons drawn. Too bad for Cardi. That 5,000 large golds are gonna be all ours. Don't get too excited now. She can't die. Who cares? Just throw potions at her and she'll be fine. Chop off her arms and legs. Make sure she can't run. Their combat power were about 300 to 400. They hadn't grown much since the last time I met them. My cloud of mist surged toward them, sapping their magic and heat, dulling their movements. What? Mama, my legs froze. I was already moving. I jabbed a dagger into the magician's neck, threw another one at the archers, then turned around and tore apart the scouts with my claws. Well, what the hell is this? A heavily armored warrior was swinging his great axe in wild abandon, his face close to tears. I focused my mist to freeze half of his body, then grabbed his face. My claws crushed the frozen head. Shetty race, Mistral needs greater demon low rank. The demon of tempestuous mist that ravages the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 1,975 out of 2,030. Plus 80. Total combat power, 2,178 out of 2,233 plus 88. Unique skill, reroll cyber manipulation absorption. Racial skill, fear. Simple identification humanoid form national treasure specialist packer. Just as I thought, 2,000 magic wasn't enough for another rank up. 30 seconds to kill them. These players had nothing more than some slapdash fighting skill, and just a bit of fear was enough to render them helpless. Honestly, they were weak. Those bodyguards at the auction were so much more troublesome. The players had been unable to stop the battle from happening, and neither could they stop the following massacre. Even if none of them would call the dead their friends, the sight of such ruthless slaughter still unnerved them. A few players took a step back, faces pale. Only the weak ones, however. The stronger players instead readied their weapons and charged. Perhaps they had managed to resist my fear. No, Isaac still tried to stop them. Sandria to his side, however, jumped out with her staff drawn and refuted. Isaac, enough already. Isn't it obvious? She's not a normal NPC, she's an event raid boss. I don't see what's so obvious about that. So they believed NPCs stronger than them were for special events, then, and that hostile ones were bosses. Seemingly convinced, Isaac begrudgingly readied his own weapons. All right, just be good now and let us capture you. Ice Lance. A magician woman fired out an enormous pillar of ice. I was pretty sure that thing was lethal, though. To humans, at least. I was both weak to magic and lacking viable solutions to the problem. Retreat was my only choice. As I leaped back, an archer some distance away shot an arrow. Shadowbind. Magicians and archers really were my worst enemies. Still, as long as I knew what was coming, it wasn't all that difficult to deal with. I threw out my torn coat. The strange skill hit its shadow. What the hell? The coat froze in midair. I dashed out from the side, toward the archer. A nimble shadow jumped in and blocked my path. Lovely Sherry, come, my arms long for you up. Whoops, I was supposed to use my dagger here, but for some reason I really wanted to kick his face in. So I did. Weed staggered back. I left his feet frozen, then threw the chilly mist at the retreating archer. A player holding a great shield intervened, blocking it. The shielder wasn't freezing. Was it another strange art? Or maybe they were being buffed with a spell. This was why I hated fighting player groups. They could cover each other's weaknesses with their special skills. I had much higher combat power, yet I still hadn't managed to kill anyone. Well, I just felt something invisible trying to bind me, so I immediately jumped away. Some distance away, standing isolated, was a pink-haired girl swinging a huge hammer. She shouted, "Leader, isn't she supposed to have only 200 combat power? How did she resist slow? Idiot, you're not supposed to be fighting." Sandria, instead of the leader Isaac, rebuked the girl. My status smokescreen was still working, then. Good. So the strange cloying feeling back then was the girl's spell. But why did she get scolded just for attacking? Because she was a magician. But wasn't she holding a big hammer and even wearing a leather chest plate over her robe? Wait a minute. I ignored the shielder and rushed straight toward her. Both she and Sandria immediately began panicking. You idiot, see what happened? She's heading for you now. Wasn't it because you were shouting? Sally, you're the idiot. So there really was a reason why they didn't want me to reach her. For example, maybe she was holding number 8 magic stone. In trying to protect Pinkhead, the coordination of Isaac's clan members began to fray. All of them had at least 400 combat power. Half of them, people who had around 700 combat power like Sandria and Weed, lost the space they needed to move freely. They could no longer cover for their comrades. Alright, gotcha. A sword and buckler warrior charged in. I dodged the slow-motion slash and froze his right arm. Well, I'll help you. Lowest pain setting, I see. His comrade, an archer, shot an arrow to cover for him. I hid behind the warrior, then threw out my frosty mist to drain both their lives dry. Downing 2 players in a blink of an eye was plenty enough to frighten the players. On one hand, them losing their calm was a good thing for me. On the other, it also meant they were no longer holding back, no longer fighting to capture. Firebolt. Sendria's fireball erupted, torching the grassland. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon low rank. Magic points, 1,935 out of 2,060. Plus 30. Total combat power, 2,141 out of 2,266. Plus 33. I dodged in desperation. Still quite damaging, despite the higher defense that came with my higher combat power. Sendria. Look, she's too dangerous. We can't win if we hold back here. It's our turn. Shield charge. He rushed at me, his great shield to the front. He wanted to launch me away. Too bad for him. Wah, I didn't budge. With his charge parried, I grabbed and froze his shield-holding arm. Having 3 times his combat power really helped out here. Stop. I instantly jumped back the moment I noticed the glint of a sword. Isaac was pointing his blade at me. Are you okay? So sorry. I could only take half of his magic and life. Pinkhead shot out a white light to the shield bearer, releasing him from the ice. Then he emptied a small bottle into his mouth. I just felt his magic recovering. Round 2, then. Fighting head-on would be disadvantageous for me. At least their potions weren't infinite. If I focused on maintaining my magic and deal with them one by one, I'd still have a chance. As long as there was an opportunity to steal number 8 magic stone, I'd win. Everyone, except for the dead, had completely recovered with their potions. I cast aside my errant thoughts and refocused, daggers in both hands, readying myself with a few hops. My ears jiggled. No one was playing around now. Even Weed looked tense, sword in hand. Isaac got ready to give the signal. At that moment, a chorus of ear-splitting shrills rang out. What now? What's this buzzing? Pitch-black monsters began to appear, staining the green grassland like a spreading puddle of tar. What is that? A player muttered. Their smile was forced, their voice brittle. The newcomers were huge, 2 meters tall and 5 meters wide tarantula-shaped monsters, with claws and carapaces of a crab. Arg. Shit, they're attacking us. Their sizes belied their speed. A nearby player was already torn in half by their claws. I knew them. No, not me. Number 1 and number 17 knowledge inside me knew of them, of their possible existence. 10 black carapace spiders. Magic points, 300 out of 300. Hit points, 500 out of 500. Total combat power, 1,000. They are experimental monster avatars driven by secret beta testers. Deputy Director Audrey opened the door of the room formerly used for monitoring the 100 secret alpha testers. Inside, the Deputy Director of the 7th Research Center, Brian, and several staff members were watching a screen. Audrey, a bit late, aren't you? He cheerfully greeted. It had been a week since the beginning of the activation test of the militarized monster avatar mass production models. 50 physically and mentally resilient soldiers of the army were chosen to be the secret beta testers. The new experimental models had been fine-tuned based on the valuable data gained from the secret alpha testers. Extraneous functions, including evolution, were removed. The precious mana gathered by beta testers had given them a head start in power. Looks like it's gonna be tough for the testers to get acclimatized with the avatars if we infuse any more mana. I suppose in the end, nothing beats gathering mana yourself to increase your power. But then again, what if we need to use those things here? Deputy Director Brian, why are you mobilizing the experimental models? Oh, this. Well, seeing your fixation with the so-called bunny girl made me curious too. Man, I knew you were hired for a reason. Just as you expected, the bunny was after the magic stone. The player event managed to lure her out. The secretary woman's face turned a tad pale. A rabbit beastman girl with an uncanny similarity to number 13. Audrey had looked into the heist of number 17 Magic Stone and had came to the same conclusion as the players. So she connected her mobile device to one of the monitoring screens and sent a watcher drone to observe the players who planned the event. And just as she thought, the rabbit beastman girl took the bait and a fight had broken out. Yet suddenly, the experimental models showed up and started attacking everyone there, when they were supposed to be still in the middle of a test run far away from any human civilization. Man, gotta say, that world really is wide. I never expected there could be a single lone beastman who could fight at that level. Identifications returned some weird numbers, but if she could fight like that, Don't you think she'd make for a great performance test for the militarized monster avatars? They were made to kill people, after all. But shouldn't we be keeping them out of the player's eyes? Oh, it's not any different from the previous Berserker event. Besides, that bunny stole the magic stone from number 17, and now she's trying to get number 8. 2 out of our original 3 testers had dropped magic stones, so why didn't number 1? Number 13 was next to him that time, right? If, just as you said, that bunny truly had a connection to number 13, wouldn't that be so interesting? Since when did he know Audrey was looking into the rabbit? She thought she saw something twisted in Brian's cheerful smile. She said nothing, her own expression stiff. Well then, let's see how much of a fight the bunny and the players can give against real soldiers in experimental models. What the hell are those monsters? Are they event monsters too? Everyone, calm down. Total combat power is 1,000. And 10 of them. Archers, keep them in check. Damn it, there are way too many of them. A carapace spider dipped low, then sent its entire body weight into an upward smash. Whoa, it was more than the great shield holder could take. He went flying, despite his combat power nearing 800. I didn't think that bit of difference in combat power could blow him off so easily, so it must be the mass difference. And the spiders knew it too. The way they fought was centered around leveraging their weight. Shadow Bind, Ice Lance, an archer pinned down a spider, and a magician froze one of its legs. But immediately, the other carapace spiders moved forward to cover for it. Their claws pierced an approaching warrior. The restrained spider opened up its crab claws. From within, rock bullets shot out, aiming at the magician staying farther away. Hag, you've got to be kidding me. Monsters are using stone bullet. The mobility and agility of a wolf. The toughness of a tank. Possessing both close-range attacks and magical capabilities. Despite personal combat power not all that much higher, they were still massacring the players one after another, without getting so much as a scratch. I wasn't just watching from the side. I was already busy with 5 of the spiders. Oof. I jumped back to dodge a downward claw, but another spider was already going around to my position. It swung its leg. I ducked, expelling mist as a smokescreen, and jumped out of the encirclement. The very moment I landed, a rock burst apart at my feet. As I struggled to reclaim my balance, a spider charged in. Damn it. I froze and shattered the grass under me. The cloud of plant fragments obscured its sight for a moment, and I took the chance to stab my dagger into its head. Tusk. The dagger tip chipped off. Seemed like I dealt some damage with that, at least, but not enough to slow it down any. I put some distance between us. The spiders didn't continue their assault. They simply moved to surround me, weaving their net. I had around double their combat power, so I was still managing to deal with their coordinated attacks. No, that wasn't right. They were playing with me, like a pack of wolves hunting a moose. Once their prey weakened, the alpha wolf would turn the hunt into a lesson for the other wolves. And this fight was no different. The spiders were just tormenting me. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon low rank. The demon of tempestuous mist that ravages the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 1,870 out of 2,060. Total combat power, 2,076 out of 2,266. Unique skill, reroll cyber manipulation absorption. Racial skill, fear. Simple identification humanoid form national treasure specialist packer. I was being ground down. At least their own magic were going down, too, due to their attacks. Still, if Isaac's group went down, the spiders over there would come and gang up on me. I apologized to Isaac in my thoughts. I didn't have the leeway to come help them, but I still needed them to survive until I've killed at least a few spiders. I suppose this wasn't the time to be holding back, then. The spiders were still slowly circling me, tightening their net. I threw the 2 daggers in my hands upward. Their movements hitched by a fraction. Immediately, I shot toward the target I had in mind. It stalled for an instant, then moved backwards and started shooting rocks. Just as I thought, their connections to their avatars were weaker than us secret alpha testers, and my target had been favoring ranged magical attacks over close quarters combat since the beginning. I dodged the rocks I already knew were coming. Before the other spiders arrived, I dispersed both my arms and clung to its top. One of its legs gouged out my stomach. I paid it no mind. As I began to freeze and absorb its life force, the neighboring spider approached and swung its giant claws. Reroll, reroll. The claws whiffed past my face, then proceeded to pierce through the carapace of the half-frozen spider. I jabbed my own claws into the hole in the shell and absorbed the rest of its magic and life force. Kko-ra-ra-ra. It was the first time a spider so much as said anything, and it was also its last. As my target disappeared in motes of light, I jumped to the neighboring spider. The accidental friendly fire had immobilized it for a few short moments. I immediately began absorption. It returned to its senses and started rampaging. Quite violently too, since I hadn't frozen this one. On the other hand, the other spiders weren't coming any closer. Reroll, 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 reroll. Every time I felt like I was about to fall, I rerolled to keep myself on it. I sucked it dry in one go. Another spider began shooting magic at me. Cyber manipulation reroll. I forced a success of cyber manipulation with reroll. Fear suddenly descended on the shooting spider, and its aim turned indiscriminate. The remaining 2 spiders were calmly dealing with the situation. They restrained the terrified spider from both sides. As they did, the bound spider started to fade away. A forced logout. Immediately, I shot my dispersed arms to one of the 2 restraining spiders, the one on the right. I stabbed my claws inside a gap on its shell and began absorbing its magic. The left spider smashed its claws into me, flinging me off. Oof, at least I managed to drain dry my target. Still, that was too much damage. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon low rank. Magic points, 1,475 out of 2,240 plus 180. Total combat power, 1,699 out of 2,464 plus 198. I lost a bunch of magic. I could still fight, just not as recklessly. Otherwise this would turn into a losing battle in a blink of an eye. I and the remaining spider entered a staring contest for a few seconds. Then it left, joining its comrades in fighting Isaac's clan. I really wanted to retreat here, but I couldn't afford to let the magic stone fall into the hands of the corporation. So I instantly gave chase. Looked like Isaac's clan managed to down one of the spiders, too, but they paid for it with half their members. They had over 20 people at the beginning of the battle, and now their numbers didn't even reach 10. The spider from my side regrouped with the other 4, repairing their formation. Sherry, as I arrived, Isaac's group turned to face me, and so did the carapace spiders. I would really like to complain about the fact that both sides were more wary of me here. Isaac, battered and bruised but with weapons still firmly held, asked, Sherry, these crab spiders aren't your friends, right? No, I see then. Do you want to join up until they're dead first? Issa MMMFPH. Sandria cut in, but didn't get to say anything before Pinkhead muffled her. Even when you look so worn out. Heh, aren't you about the same, Sherry? The players were avatars, so they were still standing on their own legs, but their wounds hadn't completely healed. Looked like they ran out of potions. Their armor and weapons were all torn and cracked, too. My glance swept through all of them. I quietly put out my hand. Give me the red magic stone. Then I'll kill them for you. Magic stone. Isaac looked dubiously at me. Even if I could only recover my magic, it should still be enough. While MMMFGRH. Again, Sandria was about to shout out something when Pinkhead held her down. Pinky reprimanded her in a lecturing tone. Sally, be quiet. This is most likely a required condition. She turned to Isaac. I think it's fine, but what do you think, leader? Isaac hesitated for a few moments. He looked at me one more time, then nodded to Pinkhead. Here. Pinkhead threw the red magic stone to me. No doubt about it. This was number 8 magic stone. Apparently Pinkhead thought this was a necessary condition to trigger the next step of their quest. But that wasn't quite right. This was a condition necessary for my way of life. I popped the stone into my mouth without hesitation. As it dissolved inside me, my magic began to rapidly stir, perhaps because all 3 magic stones were now together. Hot like I was burning up. I felt as if my body was heavier, yet at the same time lighter from the overflowing power coursing through me. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon high rank. The demon of tempestuous mist that ravages the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 4,000 out of 4,000 plus 1,760. Total combat power, 4,400 out of 4,400 plus 1,936. Unique skill, reroll cyber manipulation absorption materialization. Racial skill, fear. Simple identification human form wonderful specialist packer. I was ranking up. Number 8 legacy, the final magic stone, had elevated me to a higher rank of existence. The same thing happened when I assimilated number 17 magic stone. I skipped the rank up process entirely, while still gaining the appropriate magic power. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon high rank. The demon of tempestuous mist that ravages the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 4,000 out of 4,000 plus 1,760. Total combat power, 4,400 out of 4,400 plus 1,936. Unique skill, reroll. Cyber manipulation. Absorption. Materialization. Racial skill, fear. Simple identification human form wonderful specialist packer. Well, let's leave the nitpicking for next time. Basically, I gained a ton of magic and combat power. However, the most drastic change came from the new power I gained from number 8, materialization. Before, my human form was just a paper-thin, weightless veneer. Now, I had gained real flesh and blood, crafted from matter of this world. My body handled a bit differently from before. To be honest, I thought a body with actual substance and weight was easier to use. I curled and flexed my fingers, trying to get a feel for my new self. "Sherry, is that you?" I heard Weed calling from somewhere, bewilderment in his voice. I grew up again. I looked around 13 now, about 150 centimeters tall. 10 centimeters taller than when I first got these clothes, which meant my navel would peek out from below the hem of my blouse whenever I moved, and my knee-length skirt was pretty much a miniskirt now. Kids this age grew up so quickly, they could gain an adult's face in just a single year. Isaac, staring at me in amazement, came back to himself as he heard Weed's utterance. Just as he was about to speak, clang, my dagger flew into the head of a spider in a corner of my view, discouraging whatever it was about to do. The iron blade sank halfway into its shell and broke off, so just normal iron wouldn't be able to stand up to the spider's carapace or my current power then. Now, I only needed to create a bit of mist in order to gain a full view of the surroundings. I continued examining myself, while still keeping watch on the carapace spiders. The spiders had been watching me, too, noticing my change. But not anymore, they began to move. I responded with a quiet step forward. Just as I passed by Isaac, mouth still agape and standing stock still, I spoke. "My name's Shetty, not Sherry." He jolted in another bout of surprise. I leaped, my step blasting away a patch of grassland and bringing me to point-blank range with a spider in an instant. The vigilant spiders immediately scattered and began firing magical bullets from all sides. Mist burst out from me, weaving itself into a cloak to hide me from sight. Its winding tendrils wrapped around my target. The range and thickness of my mist had improved by leaps and bounds. Once the mist cleared, the spider under me was nothing more than a frozen statue, wasting away as grains of light. 2 spiders instantly began shooting again, while 2 others slid around me, swiping their claws in a pincer attack. I stretched my cloak of mist into a thin fog, sapping heat from the surroundings. Everything moving needed energy, whether they were living beings, machinery, or avatars. And where there was kinetic energy, there was heat. Not like I particularly understood how it worked, anyway. Their movements rapidly dulled. I latched onto one of them, freezing the shell whole and shattering it with my claws. I drained it dry of magic. The 3 remaining spiders decided to abandon close quarters combat. They tried to escape the mist, their guns still firing to suppress me. But I didn't actually need the chilly mist to slow them down. My speed was doubled with the explosive boost in combat power I gained. The magical rock bullets now looked no faster than lobbed basketballs. I just needed a light hop to the left, then to the right. Oh hey, I think I could catch those. So I did. Thankfully, they weren't shooting fireballs instead. I grabbed a boulder in midair and put all my strength into a return throw. It didn't even come close to hitting any of them, but the sight was still enough to shock a spider into a moment of indecision. I clung to it, freezing, stabbing, draining its magic. The moment my target was down, the other 2 suddenly stopped moving. They restarted a short while later, but this time, their movements were strangely mechanical. What happened? Did they change to using AI controllers? I didn't quite get their intentions. If all they wanted was just a simple, indiscriminate massacre, then an AI would probably work just fine. But using soldiers with predictable attack patterns against me, they wouldn't even be worth worrying about. I baited them out, dodged their attacks, then froze them directly with both my hands. The last 2 spiders died without much fanfare. Phew, the spiders weren't much of a problem. If anything, they caused more trouble to Isaac's group than to me. Most of the participants were dead, and the rest were beaten within an inch of their lives. I suppose that to them, their planned event couldn't have gone any worse. I sent them a glance. Several players shook off their shock and readied their weapons when they noticed my gaze. Isaac and Weed looked like they wanted to say something. Sandria, who used to be such a chatterbox when we were talking about the magic stone, was now glaring at me in silence. She seemed frustrated. Well, whatever. Not like I needed to be friends with them, anyway. And it'd be better off for them if they stayed away from scary monsters, too. If anything, I was more curious about the secret beta testers. Why were they here? Had the corporation discovered the link between me and my real-life body? If so, then my allotted time was rapidly running out. 12 days of borrowed time left. This deadline must still hold true. I won't give up. Not ever. I left the players behind me and headed toward my final target, the World Tree. I swear, I'm going to make her call me Sally next time we meet. She was still going on about that. No way, not in a million years. One day, On a popular video sharing website, a certain video was uploaded by players of World of Yggdrasia, the VRMMORPG that was still in beta. It immediately blew up. A rabbit beastman girl who looked about 13 years of age. The value of the in-game bounty for her capture was equivalent to 50 million real-life dollars. Fluffy snow-white hair, vivid red eyes, adorably drooping rabbit ears, and a cute face to boot. It didn't take long for the video to hit 1 million views. Footage showing the black spiders were cut out of the site immediately after uploading, for some reason, but the scenes of her battle against the players were intact. The viewers weren't scared by her ruthless cruelty. If anything, it only caused her popularity to skyrocket. Both the beta players and the people waiting for the official release worldwide were infatuated with her. They called her the Fluffy Bunny. Another video uploaded by a player named Weed with the title collection of glares and roasts also gained a huge amount of views. More and more people expressed a desire to be insulted by the bunny. Even a rumor was born that one would be blessed with good luck if one ever met her in-game. Some were already discussing fan-made figurines. The only one unaware was the rabbit herself. Man, what the hell is this? They were experimental, sure, but wiped out by just a single girl. Deputy Director Brian cackled, his eyes on the monitor. His laugh turned Audrey's stomach. Still, she spoke. Deputy Director. Even she could not have predicted this outcome. The avatars might have been experimental models, but they already had proven themselves to possess power equivalent to that of modern light tanks. The girl certainly had some trouble in the beginning, yet once she acquired the magic stone, she dealt with 5 of the experimental models in an instant. The few drones currently chasing after her had already been shot down. Her whereabouts was unknown. The last 2 avatars got the data right. Begin upgrading the militarized monster avatars with that right now. Throw versatility out the door. We just need to hunt the rabbit. Oh man, I can't wait to dissect that girl, Brian ordered, sounding extremely upbeat. Then his twisted grin turned to Audrey. Audrey, you're the best secretary ever. I could kiss you just for finding that wonderful tester for us. All right, I've got another job for you. Go check on the vital signs of number 13 in the collection facility. We'll be cornering the rabbit soon, so if the girl showed any reactions at all, tell me immediately. I'll dissect her myself. Understood. Audrey thought she caught a glimpse of insanity within his eyes. Still, she bowed, looking like the model's subordinate. Just a few days later, development of the militarized monster avatar specialized for the rabbit was done. Their designation was Mo-3B. 50 soldiers of the army were participating in Operation Rabbit Season. Author's note, wow, Shetty is so popular Snickers. The fan-made figurines are 1/5 sized. Only 50 will be made, priced at $100 each. 9 days of borrowed time left. I was finally on my way to the World Tree in order to find a way to save my soul back on Earth. I had to wonder if there really was a way. Number 1 had believed in the faint possibility, and he said as much in his testament. Yet that was no guarantee of salvation. At least a bit of hope was better than nothing. According to the travel guide I read on the airship, there were 2 possible paths from the free city of Sais to the World Tree. I could continue south and pass through Sinker's Academy City, get on a ship to go to the holy city Iyun, then cross a bit more land and sea to reach the central island, where the World Tree was. The other path was similar. I could go by airship from Sais to Iyun, and the rest would be the same. The central island was surrounded by a donut-shaped mountain range. The only way in was through the holy city Iyun, which was why both paths required me to go there. And it was also the most problematic part of the journey. According to the guidebook, Iyun was the country closest to the World Tree, and at the same time housing the headquarters of the religion revering the tree. So it must also be the main base of the corporation that was playing God to this world. It would be the most dangerous place in the world for me, and I even heard rumors of heroes there, too. Besides, that mess with the beta players made it a lot more difficult for me to use public transportation in the first place. If I entered a large town and got discovered, the resulting complications would waste more of my time than simply taking a detour. So I decided to take the third path, moving by myself. I would head south toward the peninsula to the western end of Sinkers, cross the ocean by my own power, climb the steep mountain wall surrounding the central island, and head directly to the World Tree. I should be able to make the distance probably. According to the rough map I saw, at least. I dealt with the Watcher drones tailing me, and went south, detouring around towns when necessary. Within territories that looked like they belonged to humans, I stayed in my human form. Once I escaped the area surrounding the free city, I could finally turn back to mist. It wasn't like there were no downsides to having a body with substance. The biggest disadvantage was that I had lost the ability to partially transform. I could only either be completely mist or completely human. When dispersed, I became almost completely immune to physical attacks, and absorption would work a lot faster. On the other hand, my own attacks would lack weight, and area of effect spells could hurt me badly. When in human form, I could deal out heavy strikes and change position rapidly, which made dodging spells relatively easier. But physical attacks would hurt me more. My detection range would shrink by a bit, and the most annoying thing was that I could no longer use Packer when human. I would have to take what I needed out of my inventory beforehand. I gained the ability to create mist while human, too, so there wasn't much of a difference between freezing things in mist form or in human form. And while my human form was better at short-ranged, instantaneous movements, my mist form was much faster at traveling long distance or going through wastelands. So once I left the lands of humans, I immediately changed back into mist. My speed was probably around the same as an ordinary train's. Might as well take the occasion to confirm my power. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon High Ran. The demon of tempestuous mist that ravages the northern seas. A canny spiritual life form. Magic points, 4,300 out of 4,300 plus 300. Total combat power, 4,730 out of 4,730 plus 330. Unique skill, reroll, cyber manipulation, absorption, materialization. Racial skill, fear. Simple identification, human form, wonderful, specialist Packer. With the acquisition of materialization, humanoid form turned into human form. I wasn't just looking like a human. I had gained a real body, one that was practically the same as when I was still a normal human, only more grown up. My voice was no longer simply me messing with pockets of air. I was truly breathing now, even if I was actually breathing mana, not oxygen. In the beginning, I could recover only 10% of my magic each hour. With the combination of absorption and materialization, that number had jumped to 30%. Yet all that did not excuse the use of wonderful to describe me. Just what the hell was it assessing? I agreed, human form was really quite wonderful, but still. So my body was almost indistinguishable from a real human's now, but the rabbit ears were still staying unsurprisingly. Honestly, I was halfway to complete resignation by now. Weird, isn't it? My brain was supposed to be taking over the job of the system these days, yet I was only evolving in the oddest ways. Maybe I should just embrace the inevitable already. Might as well find myself a bunny suit, in that case. Anyway, that was about it. From now on, I'd need to learn how to fight with both forms, and how to use them in the right situation. 3 days after I went south from Sais, I finally began to see traces of what looked like human civilization in a forest, so I turned human again. Whenever I turn human, first, I needed to throw out my clothes and satchel from Packer inventory. The moment they appear, I would slip my body of mist into the outfit and change form. Clothed human transformation, in effect. It took me half a day to learn how to do this. God, so much precious time lost. But this was important. I would never allow myself to forget wearing clothes. Personal dignity aside, once I started putting one foot after another on solid ground, Blobsy immediately jumped out from my satchel. She hauled herself onto my shoulder, then jiggled in joy. Cute. I took some jerky from my satchel, fed Blobsy her snack, and began running. My sprint was as fast as a cheetah's now. The Academy City of Sinkers was supposed to be nearby. Apparently, the country was gathering elite students and researchers from all over the world to do something. I only turned human as insurance. I had no plans to get anywhere close to the country. The people there must be doing mana research by orders of the corporation, so I expected heavy surveillance, which meant I shouldn't be showing my mist form here. I didn't want to allow for the possibility of them realizing my link to number 13. Well, I had a feeling they already had an inkling of my identity, though whoa. The moment I exited the forest, I noticed a watcher drone. I immediately blasted mist from my fingers to freeze it. I could now expel mist in human form, in exchange for the ability to partially transform. This mist was both me, yet not me. It moved according to my will, but it also had some similarities to spells in that it consumed my magic power. In the end, it might not sound like much of a distinction. But the important thing here was that if an attack hit the mist, it would only cost me the magical expense of the lost mist. I wouldn't need to worry about the attack seriously hurting me. Well, my real body of mist would be able to do absorption a lot faster, though. Just as I thought, once I left the forest and got closer to the country, I began to see a lot more of those watcher drones. They hadn't found me yet. All the same, the corporation would be suspecting something was wrong once they noticed dozens of drones breaking down in the same region within just a few days. I should be able to reach the peninsula if I turned west here. I focused my eyes on what I hoped to be the right direction. There, so far away, I saw the shadow of a mountain. A silhouette robed in fog, foot resting upon the ocean. It was the right direction, then. As I got ready to leave, I suddenly detected multiple magical signals. I promptly leaped away. Rat-a-tat-a-tat. The ground where I used to stand on exploded, blowing away my cloak of mist. What was that? I recreated my mist, checking out my surroundings. Strange monsters were surrounding me. I never even noticed. They were colored black, with torsos and wings of a cricket and spindly spider legs. 15 cricket spider. Magic points, 475 out of 500. Hit points, 750 out of 750. Total combat power, 1750. More secret beta testers. Different avatars, but much stronger this time. As I attempted escape from the encirclement, they gave chase, lanky spider legs running like a horse. God, that looked disgusting. And fast too, at that. I created even more mist to hide myself. Several cricket spiders opened their mouths, wings vibrating at high speed. Invisible projectiles shot at me. Rat-a-tat. So this was what they ambushed me with. Exploding bullets of wind. No direct hits, yet my mist was still blown away. Were they spells? They actually hurt me. These monster avatars were purely long-range combatants, and their focus was on raw speed rather than agility. Their aim must be to keep me away from melee range. Then how troublesome. The moment I moved, the whole encirclement followed. But that didn't mean I was helpless. I dashed toward one of them, my step gouging out the earth. They all promptly retreated. Still, I didn't have over 4,000 combat power for nothing. My superior acceleration blasted me past my target, and my claws ripped it apart from head to wings. Frost spread from its wounds to turn it into a popsicle. They were a lot softer than the carapace spiders. I could do this. Then, just as I got ready to leap toward my next target, it jumped. It began to hover in midair, wings flapping. It wasn't true flight. It was slowly descending. But I still couldn't reach it. Rat-a-tat-a. A rain of explosive wind bullets came from the other cricket spiders. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon High Ran. Magic points. 3,860 out of 4,380 plus 80. Total combat power. 4,290 out of 4,810 plus 80. That really hurt. I rolled away, dodging the projectiles. I attempted a dash toward the nearest target, but again, it immediately jumped up. More bullets came. My suspicions were confirmed. They couldn't fire in rapid succession, and there weren't that many bullets in each salvo. The damage wasn't that bad. Still, this couldn't continue. I weaved around the hail of bullets with rapid dashes. An idea came to mind, and I immediately froze the ground. Yes, one of them got stuck on the ice-covered earth. I instantly changed direction. Before the other cricket spiders could do anything, I tore it apart with claws and dagger, then drained it dry of magic. Rat-a-tat-tat. A sudden hail of bullets rained down, blowing away both me and my target. Shetty, race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon High Ran. Magic points. 3,440 out of 4,460 plus 80. Total combat power. 3,880 out of 4,900 plus 90. At least they were killable. Still, they had the advantage, and it was only going to get worse for me. I should try to repeat this a few more times. Hopefully I could get rid of another one. My thoughts stalled as I witnessed the cricket spiders releasing their encirclement. They stepped back, then faded into non-existence. Did they log out? What's going on? At least this was better than the alternative. Continuing that fight would have just left me worse off. I departed the area and continued toward the direction of the World Tree. After that first encounter, their assaults became a regular occurrence. Yet the battles always ended in their retreat, even when they still hadn't lost. I see, so they were returning to refuel the magic consumed when they shot those explosive wind bullets. That was just unfair. After another 3 days of constant battles, I finally crossed the peninsula. I could see the sea now. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon High Ran. Magic points, 2,750 out of 4,620 plus 160. Total combat power, 3,210 out of 5,080 plus 180. Across the ocean was a craggy mountain range, towering over 1,000 meters. Yet behind it was an even bigger tree. A green colossus sharing home with the clouds. The World Tree, surrounded by the towering mountain range, was a green giant several times larger. Just how enormous was it? While the air here was certainly a lot cleaner than Earth's, I still could not believe I was actually seeing the silhouette of a tree thousands of kilometers away. The World Tree, together with the 99 saplings, they served as the cornerstones of this world. Wait, no, this wasn't the time to be admiring scenery. That thousands of kilometers was exactly what I must cross. Rat-a-tat-tat. Not again. More explosive wind bullets appeared out of nowhere. I promptly dashed away. The militarized monster avatars, driven by secret beta testers, showed themselves. 5 black cricket spiders galloped after me on their 8 legs, shooting their spills all the while. It had been 24 hours since my first encounter with the cricket spiders. They never stopped attacking. Every time they ran out of magic and left, they would return a few hours after, or just 10 minutes if luck was being particularly uncharitable. They would just revive if I killed them. They weren't getting the penalty to their magic like normal beta players, but they should still be losing the amount I drained from them. Yet to the contrary, it seemed their magic was even slightly increasing. Perhaps they were taking turns killing monsters or humans somewhere else. Even when I was recovering 30% every hour, it still wasn't enough. My current magic was already down to half capacity. I really couldn't afford to keep fighting them. I stayed as human and ran toward the sea. I was the demon of tempestuous mist that ravages the northern seas, so I could cross the ocean just fine if I turned to mist here. But with the threat of wind bullets looming behind me, I didn't dare. Flight as a human was possible too, but keeping it up for long hours would be rough on me, plus I'd lose a lot of my maneuverability. So I decided to just run on the water. The mist from my feet froze the waves with each step I took. Not very stable footing, but it would suffice. I kept up my speed. Their attempts to follow me ended in shattered ice and drowning spiders. Really, were they even using their eyes? Why did they think my ice could support their weight? 6 days of borrowed time left, considering I'd have to cross the ocean, the mountain range, then another strip of ocean to reach the central island where the world tree was. I was cutting it really close. I kept on running on the frozen path for a whole day and night. As I expected, the sea had stopped any further attacks. Still, I had to constantly create mist, so I didn't recover all that much magic. Perhaps I should just accept the loss of secrecy and go all out as flying mist. I couldn't decide, especially when there were still drones watching me from beyond my attack range even now. A giant shark attacked me on the way. I kept up my speed, leaving behind a sinking frozen fish. 4 days of borrowed time left. I could finally see the shore, the regions around the world tree, and its saplings generally had mild climate and an abundance of greenery, yet the mountains here had nothing but precipitous cliffs, its rock face permitting no life. Damn it, so this was why the secret beta testers didn't attack me on the ocean. They were setting up an ambush here. Over 40 cricket spiders were occupying the relatively more level areas of the shoreline, waiting for my arrival. The 10 foremost spiders fired their wind bullets in unison. I immediately stopped creating mist and dove into the ocean. I supposed it wasn't time to worry about keeping secrets then. With the full strength of my magic, I carved out an enormous chunk of frozen ocean to throw at them. They immediately blew it apart. I fully transformed into mist, blasting through the ice fragments and their ambush. I left behind several spider popsicles as I began climbing the mountain. But there was a surprise waiting for me. A surprise that, I was convinced, was also unknown to the secret beta testers. There was a reason why no one ever reached the world tree without following the official path. The mountains itself rejected all intruders. Of the secret alpha testers, the survivors with broken psyches were being kept and monitored in a separate facility. The comatose children were lying still within 57 suspended animation capsules. Audrey was there in front of them, connected to her audio-visual VR set. She was in a call with Brian, who was still staying back at the 7th Research Center. Haha, unbelievable. So she truly was connected to number 13. I just saw our little bunny turn into the mist monster. Haha. Audrey, what about your side? She coolly began her report. Number 13 still hasn't shown any responses, and neither have the other subjects. Also, the supervisor of the orphanage that number 13 used to stay in has arrived as per your invitation. How shall we proceed? Oh, she's there already. She should be quite familiar with number 13, so I invited her for another point of view. Feel free to talk to her. Let's see, so number 13 still unresponsive. Then I will continue my observation. Audrey cut off the visual feed and returned her eyes to reality. Turning around, she saw a woman around 50 with heavy makeup slurping some coffee while making herself very comfortable. She turned her smirk to Audrey. Done with the deputy director's call. Yes, that's right. No one in the world knows that girl more than me. The demon child used to be such a brat when she first joined up. Nothing a few beatings couldn't fix though. Hey. The supervisor woman said, sounding so very proud of her deeds. I see. Yes, and if she hasn't shown any responses, then we can take her out of the capsule and give her the full-body electroshock treatment just like I used to. Even the brat was scared of it back then, screaming and crying every time I did it, so it should work great here. Even among the research orphanages established all around the world, this woman was still one of the best in terms of getting results. The corporation rated her highly. and in similarly high-achieving orphanages, such cruelties were a daily occurrence. We will need to request the deputy director's permission. Audrey replied. Policy required the children who were forcefully logged out due to mental collapses to be kept alive in the collection facility for exactly 30 days. Their plugs would be pulled in order. The final processing would only begin once life support stopped for all the secret alpha testers. As of now, around 70% had reached the end of their lease on life. Their deaths were already confirmed. The very final tester, number 13, had 4 days left. Even if this observation truly revealed a link between number 13 and the rabbit beastman girl, a live dissection was all that awaited her. With how her life had been, it would have been much more merciful to just let her die in peace, Audrey thought. Suddenly, Brian's shout rang out from the VR device. What the hell are those monsters? As mist, I was practically running up the mountain. Once I reached a fifth of the way, the cricket spiders finally realized the monster of mist was me. They opened fire. I had a lot more surface area as mist, so dodging was difficult. Still, with the distance I gained, just a bit of token avoidance was enough to get me out of the way of most of the bullets. Only a few hit, but the moment the projectiles smashed into the rock face, a vast number of magical signals appeared on my radar. Here and there, beasts made out of stone and boulders began to come into existence. They attacked both me and the cricket spiders. What in the world were they? Rock monster allots. Magic points, 500 out of 700. Total combat power, 530 out of 780. I didn't see their hit points. So were they spiritual life forms? If they weren't demons, then elementals. Their magic power were about the same as me when I just became a lesser demon. Their numbers were worrying. However, hundreds, no, perhaps even thousands. The cricket spiders had more combat power, yet it meant nothing in front of overwhelming quantity. They immediately gathered up and focused fire on the newcomers. It still could not stop the rock avalanche from swallowing them whole in a blink of an eye. I didn't have the leeway to worry about them here. If they really were elementals, then perhaps their purpose was to eliminate anyone trying to reach the world tree without using the sanctioned path. About 1,000 of them began to move toward me. I wasn't sure if it was because I was trying to cross the mountains, or because I was a demon, but they seemed extraordinarily hostile. I couldn't afford to oppose them head-on. With all my strength, I blasted freezing air at the elementals above me. The frozen boulders became obstacles for the ascending elementals chasing me, and I continued my way to the top. Time after time, stony barrages assaulted me, and I would avoid them by condensing myself. My path twisted and turned. Sometimes I ignored the newly formed elementals, and sometimes I would kill them. After what must have been a whole day, I finally crossed the mountaintop, battered and bruised. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon High Rank. Magic points, 1,370 out of 5,220 plus 600. Total combat power, 1890 out of 5,740 plus 660. Having over 5,000 magic still wasn't enough for an evolution or rank up. Was there even anything above Greater Demon in the first place? Well, stronger was stronger, especially since the elementals were still on my tail. The world tree was so close the trunk was clearly visible, but only the trunk. Its higher branches lay hidden behind fog. Surrounded by an inland sea was the central island, which I thought was already quite large by itself. But with how much space the world tree's trunk was taking up, I could barely see any visible earth. 3 days of borrowed time left. More rock elementals were forming around me. Any more damage and I would seriously risk death here. I flew off from the downward sloping cliff, taking a few hits from the elementals below me while dodging the projectiles from behind. Finally, I managed to escape to the inland sea. The rock elementals stopped chasing me at the shoreline. They weren't even shooting, despite the straight flight path I was taking above the sea. Were they not considering the waters to be their jurisdiction since they were Earth-type? Then whose? GGRAARGHH. The waters erupted. From under the sea appeared aquatic serpents, with fins and everything. They looked like wingless dragons. Water dragon. Magic points, 465 out of 480. Hit points, 1,280 out of 1,280. Total combat power, 4,950. Hold up, what the hell was with that power? And there wasn't just one of them. Hundreds of water dragons were patrolling around the central island, as if guarding the world tree. Damn it, considering how much combat power I had currently, I could die in just one hit if I wasn't careful. Hesitation almost made me freeze up for a moment, but I pushed myself forward. A few of them noticed me. They opened their mouths, shooting out torrents of water. Shetty race, Mistral Niche Greater Demon High Rank. Magic points, 940 out of 5,220. Total combat power, 1,460 out of 5,740. No, too much damage. And that was just a single hit. I attempted to freeze the water to interrupt any further attacks, but with how low my power had become, I could only create a thin layer of surface ice. I dodged, avoiding any direct hits, twisting and turning through the water beams. At least I had an advantage in my flight speed. The swimming water dragons were slightly slower than me. I weaved back and forth to shake off the dragons, at times approaching, at times going away from the island. After a long while, I finally managed to land on the shore. Shetty race, Mistral, Niche, Greater Demon high rank, magic points, 330 out of 5,220. Total combat power, 850 out of 5,740. I could literally die from just a scratch. Thankfully, the water dragons no longer pursue me. Again, was land not their jurisdiction? I thought they would still continue attacking since they weren't elementals. How bewildering. But once I attempted to go inland, I understood why. An invisible wall was blocking my path. Was this a barrier? That can't be right. Were monsters not allowed to approach? I came all the way here. What the hell do I do? In my stupor, I barely noticed something rolling out from my packer inventory. Boing. Blobsy. She bounced ahead, going through the barrier as if nothing was there, then stopped. Then she stopped and began hopping in place, as if to say hurry up. Why could she pass? She's a monster too, right? Blobsy race, Jelly Slimekin of Shetty, the demon. Magic points, 10 out of 10. Hit points, 10 out of 10. Total combat power, 10. Special skill, laundry, cleaning. Oh, cleaning, that was new. Wait, no, not that. She hadn't had any important change, that was the point. Why could Blobsy go in? Such a harmless. An idea came to mind. I transformed into my human form and gingerly stepped forward. Nothing stopped me, so only harmless beasts and real humans could cross the barrier. Then, if my skill was still at humanoid form, I might have been stuck here forever. What a relief. Thank you, Blobsy. I'll treat you to tons of food later. Boing. 2 days of borrowed time left. I was still some distance away, yet the tree was already dominating my view. I ran toward it, Blobsy on my shoulder. Aside from the moss covering the area and the tree itself, I detected no other signs of life. After a while, I reached one of the tree's roots. So enormous its thickness alone took up the space of a baseball field. I was here. After so long, I was finally here. My salvation must be waiting for me. I had already gambled all my hope on this, after all. I quietly, gently touched the tree's roots. Nothing's happening. Perhaps I needed to do something. Or perhaps the roots wouldn't work, and I'd need to go further up. But back then, world, waiting, you, save, human, salvation, life, souls, children. A massive influx of information poured into my mind. I nearly blanked out. This was the will of the world tree. It wasn't a matter of language or intelligence. Its thought processes were simply too alien for human understanding. If I hadn't had the experience of processing similarly insane amount of information ever since I began the game, the tree really would have fried my brain there and then. I processed the vast voice of the world tree. Slowly but surely, we communicated. I wasn't sure how long it took, but it must have been quite a while. As I comprehended its words, the truth of this world was revealed to me. Yeah, it's a contract, then, between you and me, between the world tree and a demon. Slight fluctuation in number 13 brain activity. A staff member reported. Audrey raised her head and let slip a whisper. Could it be? See, this was all thanks to me. I knew unfreezing and shocking her would do the trick. The orphanage supervisor proudly said. Only number 13 was the only one left. All the other secret alpha testers had already had their plugs pulled. The white girl was lying there unconscious, outside of her suspended animation capsule. Dozens of electrode rods were stabbing into her flesh. A horrific sight like no other. Number 13 vitals are. Something's not right. What's going on? The slight tick in number 13 brain activity suddenly went off the charts in a blink of an eye. Audrey and the supervisor woman looked to the white girl. As everyone in the room turned their attentions upon her, number 13 body rapidly began losing color and collapsed into a pile of salt. The unthinkable sight shocked the staff members into stillness. Meanwhile, the other children's corpses that were waiting for disposal followed suit, turning into piles of salt one after another. The fully lit room darkened ever so slightly, as though simply a trick of the light. Within the skin-crawling chilly room, a faint voice reached their ears. The voice of a girl. I'm back. I was an unwanted child. My earliest memory was of a fight between my so-called parents. They looked at me with scornful eyes. They vented any and all irritation upon me. They were always yelling. The man called me an eyesore every time he saw me, told me to shut up every time I cried. How many times he'd kicked me, I didn't recall. nor could I remember the number of beatings the woman had given me, even as she screamed, "You should never have been born." Bruises littered my skin. Every morning, I got a single loaf of hard bread to last the whole day. Once every few days, I would have a chance to wash myself with the leftover bath water. They threw me out to the veranda at night, and I would curl up and sleep in any empty spot I could find among the mountains of trash outside the house. Before I noticed, the man was no longer around the house. The woman, mind sick and heart twisted, called me a demon as her final words to me. The last I saw of her was her misshapen grin as her hands tightened around my throat. When I came to, I was in a white hospital room. I was fed decent, warm food for the first time. I vomited it all. I didn't speak, laugh, or even cry much. No one would love such a kid. The adults of the orphanage always hit me first before talking. They would take my food away, lock me inside a storeroom until morning, and they called it discipline. What did I ever do? Upon turning 8 years old in the orphanage, I finally gave up on being a child. "Audrey, what's going on over there?" Number 13 had a response. "Right. Come on, explain quick." The audio-visual VR device could not share any data that was yet to be digitized. Brian, in the 7th Research Center, could not see what was going on in the collection facility. Audrey and the staff members heard his voice, but none could speak. The unnatural sight they saw, and the chilly presence they felt had rooted them to the spot. Number 13 was lying there, outside of the suspended animation capsule and connected to a myriad of machines. Her body turned white, as if the color was being sucked out of her, and finally crumbled into a pile of salt. As if in response, the other 56 secret alpha tester bodies inside their capsules followed suit and collapsed into salt. The voice of a girl faintly rang deep inside the ears of everyone there. "I'm back." A white, shining ball of light gently rose up from number 13 pile of salt. The salt flew up and weaved around the ball, forming a vague human shape. Sounds of fracturing glass rang out throughout the room. From the other 56 capsules, the salt slipped through the newly formed cracks and danced around the human silhouette. They gathered, putting details to the shape. Smooth white skin, like porcelain. Curly snow-white hair hanging to the shoulders, and poking out from the locks were 2 long, similarly white ears. Her eyes slowly opened, revealing 2 pools of blood-red pupils. She floated in the air, graceful limbs bare to all. Then smears of bloody liquid began to form, staining the pure whiteness. The liquid transformed into a scarlet dress with a black collar and a puffy, layered miniskirt. Black stockings with a hint of red, scarlet high heels, and red gloves wrapping around sharp claws completed the ensemble. Such an eerie bunny girl. As the girl leisurely spread her arms, 56 balls of light gathered toward her. She tenderly hugged them to her chest. "Can you hear me? What the hell is going on?" Brian's voice unknowingly cut through the fantastic spectacle, bringing the room's occupants back to their own minds. Hearing the voice, the white girl finally turned her eyes to the humans. Her red eyes narrowed into a cool glare. An electrode rod clattered on the floor. Their thoughts could not catch up to reality for an instant. Between one blink of the eye to the next, the white girl's kick had already taken off the orphanage supervisor's left arm. The limb was pulverized into dust. The stump froze. Despite the lack of any pain or bleeding, the woman still screamed from the terror of seeing her own arm blowing off. As she held the wound with her right hands, the frost spread to her fingers. They shattered, prompting another howl. ARRGGHH. There was no pain. As the terrified woman writhed on the floor, screaming all the while, the white girl picked up the electrode rod on the floor. She calmly approached, holding down the woman, and slowly pushed the rod deep into her ear. Okga, the supervisor woman twitched, once, twice, then finally lay still. The staff members could only watch in silent horror. A woman was the first among the spectators to react. Her terror, no longer under control, made itself apparent with a throat-splitting scream. With her voice, the other staff members finally came back to themselves. They rang the alarm. A few of them attempted to escape through the exit, yet in another blink of an eye, the girl was there. Her gloved claws tore their heads clean off. The other staff members were running about in their terrified panic. A blast of mist from the girl turned them into frozen statues in an instant. The sculptures fell down and shattered. The room temperature dropped sharply, turning the survivors' breaths into white fog. Their clothes were soaked with cold sweat. Freeze. The guards showed up, shouting a token warning. The moment they noticed the massacre, they immediately opened fire on the white girl. The promptness with which they assessed the situation and made the decision to shoot a girl who looked barely a teenager hinted at their experience. Most likely, they were ex-mercenaries hired through the contacts the corporation had in the defense industry. 3 guards stood in front. Running up directly behind them were another 5. The bullets grazed the girl. She narrowed her eyes, then pointed her palm at them and made a motion to crush something in her hand. The 8 guards suddenly collapsed, blood spurting out from everywhere on their bodies. What did she do? Their wounds shared nothing common, both in location and in severity. Over half of them still drew breath. A man among them, both legs broken, still attempted to aim his gun even as he whimpered from the pain. But his efforts were futile. The meandering mist turned him and the rest of the surviving guards into ice sculptures. I give permission to deploy the magic weapons. Brian finally realized something was wrong and connected to a monitoring camera inside the collection facility. He gave his order. The monster avatars were still in the experimental phase. However, development of guns with carved runes to allow them the ability to use mana was already near completion. The so-called Magitech weapon of the modern world was almost ready for use in real combat. To create mana-sensitive material, they would need to store an amount of silver in close contact with mana for nearly 2 years. Thus, the resources available to manufacture the weapons were still limited, and the guns themselves could not fire in full auto due to the large amount of mana required for each activation. On the other hand, the rune guns had the range and power of a typical rifle despite shooting 9mm sized bullets. Furthermore, the projectiles weren't affected by the atmosphere or gravity. The very first firearm in the world with a straight bullet path. Several minutes later, another group of guards arrived. They were holding strange-looking assault rifles. The guns themselves were slender. Attached to the underside were small containers the size of a pen case, mana batteries. If they could deploy the mana-operated avatars here, they would already have done so. Unfortunately, operating time was still too limited, perhaps due to modern Earth's atmosphere, or perhaps because Earth itself had no mana. The other choice of avatars was the old model that used no mana, and this type could only exhibit 70% the physical capability of a normal adult. In the end, the corporation was forced to use real humans for this fight. Though the power of magic using weapons might vary, it didn't change the fact that they were effective against spiritual life forms. Currently, the facility possessed 20 such magic guns, including the reserve. 12 guards and 6 staff members with shooting experience were aiming 18 of the guns at the girl. Fire, chairs and tables were torn into shreds by the salvo. The moment everyone thought the girl would share their fate, she turned into mist. The bullets passed through her without leaving a single trace. In their shock, the guards even forgot the existence of the guns in their hands for a moment. A white mist blew at them, and from within, the girl leaped out. Once the mist cleared, all that remained were 18 frozen statues. What the hell is that? Brian's voice leaked out from the VR device. The white girl looked at the camera that was connected to his vision, her rabbit ears swaying as if to say, "You already forgot." She pointed her palm to the camera and squeezed. My leg. Ryan, who was still supposed to be staying back at the 7th Research Center, screamed. He had forgotten about the fact that in his childhood, he had nearly lost a leg in a traffic accident. Fortunately, the driver had stopped in time, and his wound hadn't been as severe as it could be. But back in the present, unfortunately, the driver turned out to not have stopped in time at all. One of Brian's legs detached from his body. A disconnection cut short his echoing scream. In the room cold enough that water could freeze, Audrey sat on the floor. Her face had turned blue, her lips purple, and she couldn't even muster the courage to stand up. "Number 13, Audrey whispered, her voice shivering. There were barely anyone left alive. Hearing her whisper, the girl quietly turned around. Clack clack, she approached on heels that looked more like they were made to gouge out flesh rather than to carry a girl's weight. The razor-sharp footsteps stopped in front of Audrey. The girl stared at her face. "You recognize me? Are you number 13? Why do you look like that? What did you do to the deputy director?" Hearing Audrey replied with only more questions. Number 13, the white girl named Shetty, looked exasperated. She quietly pulled her head back. "Nothing special, really. Besides, well, you'll do." Shetty picked Audrey up with one hand around the woman's neck. "I have to go back soon. I'm still not strong enough to stay here for long. But remember this." Audrey gulped. Their faces were barely 10 centimeters apart. She thought she saw dark flames faintly smoldering deep inside the girl's eyes. "I'll come back, and I'll be a lot stronger then. The demon will come back to kill you all." Shetty dropped the woman on the ground. The girl casually turned away and disappeared, melting into the thick mist. That day, the corporation learned of the existence of the demon that would be their enemy. My foggy vision slowly cleared up. I was standing at the World Tree, a giant so enormous it took up all of my field of view. Good, I came back without any problems. Honestly, staying any longer on Earth would have been really dangerous for me. Bounce. I'm back, Blobsy. She rubbed herself on my feet. She'd been waiting for me on this side. I scooped her up and put her on my shoulder. Exhausted from overuse of magic, I dragged myself toward the tree's roots and spread my arms. Here they are, the souls of the 56 secret alpha testers, children who had met their demise on Earth, flew off from my chest. One after another, they were absorbed into the tree, as if following an invisible guiding hand. Go ahead and rest, okay? You've earned it. Through the saplings, the souls of the other 43 secret alpha testers who had lost their life in this world were already resting within the world tree. Except for me, all the 99 children were together now. Number 1, Number 8, Number 17. There was no way you could hear me now. Still, I wanted to say thanks for saving my life. The contract I made with the world tree had allowed me to reincarnate into a demon. I had been granted a new life on this world. It was all thanks to the powers I inherited from my comrades. If I lacked even one, I wouldn't have been standing here. The contract had also granted me more power and maturity for my body. I now had the height and appearance of a 14-year-old. Shetty, race, bunny girl, lesser archdemon level 1, the rabbit demon of Lap Plus, trickster and guide of man's fate. Magic points, 730 out of 12,000, plus 6,780. Total combat power, 1,930 out of 13,200, plus 7,460. Unique skill, causality alteration, cyber manipulation, absorption, materialization. Racial skill, fear. Mist form, simple identification. Human form, wonderful. Subspace inventory. I gave up. Sure, I might have already accepted the fact that I would be spending my whole life with rabbit ears and tail, but that race was still going way too far, wasn't it? And I might have had thoughts about just embracing the inevitable and getting an actual bunny suit, but that was no permission for materialization to do such a stupidly good job. Now I had a weird outfit. I never even wanted it. The design, except for the skirt, was probably influenced by the images I'd seen of those sorts of bunny girls. At least my chest and hips were covered up. Thank goodness I still had enough subconscious shame to stop the outfit from looking too outrageous. My skirt was made out of layered sheets of fabric, which made it quite puffy. However, once I took out my cloak from Packer and wore it, the skirt magically flattened. How convenient, right? So Packer evolved too. It turned into subspace inventory now, which allowed me to use it in human form, too. Turned out the items I'd been storing until now wasn't actually staying inside my body like I used to think. They were staying in distorted space. I was now a lesser archdemon. Apparently there was a big shot called an archdemon, and my class was based on it. The world tree must have given me the information. These weren't knowledge I would have known otherwise. However, my class didn't have low or high rank like before, but a level display instead. Did it mean there were multiple more steps before I could become an actual archdemon? Most probably. I wouldn't be changing like in the rank ups I'd done until now. I would only be gaining more power. I had no basis for my belief, but somehow I knew it to be true. I had over 10,000 magic power now. Still, it wasn't enough power for me to complete my contract. By my lonesome. This was where my unique skills came into play. This was just a guess, but perhaps my race had changed due to the evolution of my own unique skill, reroll. It had become causality alteration. I was born with the power to unconsciously cause bad luck to happen to other people. They would trip on flat ground. Their scratches would become serious wounds. My newly evolved causality alteration interfered with my target's karma in order to change an event to the most unlucky outcome. But even evolved, my skill was still governed by a chance of success. If the wound in their past was easy to avoid, or if my target was powerful, my chance of success and amount of magic consumed would vary greatly. Those guards were formerly mercenaries. They were, quite literally, all lucky survivors, so the chance of granting misfortune to their past wounds were over 75% for all of them. Although the magic consumption really surprised me. To worsen a single wound of a mundane human with no magic and only around 150 combat power, an opponent which might as well be an ant to me, actually took a whole 100 of my magic. My own stockpile of magic was dropping like a rock just by maintaining myself on magicless Earth. Combined with my attempts to hurt the deputy director from a distance, which only had a 12% success chance and which I only succeeded after multiple failures, my remaining magic had dropped to under 1,000. The minimum combat power I could have was 10% of my maximum magic power, so I was practically invincible when facing mundane humans. Still, seeing my magic going so low got me a bit worried. I mean, I couldn't help myself. I really wanted to get at least a hit in on those guys. Unlike before, the mist was no longer the real me. My base form had switched over to being the bunny girl, while I gained mist form. As a racial skill, it didn't really change my combat style. Still, if my body was destroyed, I wouldn't be able to reform myself into mist again like I used to. I'd need to be more careful, especially when I would have to take on the whole world in order to fulfill my contract with the World Tree. Everyone, from the people of this world to the corporation, all believed in the same thing, that the World Tree and its saplings sustained the world with infinite mana. But that was wrong. Mana on this world was created from the souls of living beings. As creatures died, their souls were then gathered by the saplings and then sent to the World Tree. The World Tree was the maintenance system created by the world of Yggdrasia. Among the gathered souls, souls that had gathered a large amount of experience would be allowed to retain some of it and reincarnate as a higher form of life. Souls not as accomplished would have their experience absorbed by the World Tree and then reborn as a normal living being. And finally, souls with only a minuscule amount of experience were completely recycled into pure mana, becoming materials to create new souls. The mana filling this world all came from converted experience of living beings. The mana kept inside the World Tree, and the saplings were for creating new life. But the human race of this world was squandering it for their own luxury. The tree wasn't able to keep up with the conversion. It even had to begin dipping into the mana storage set aside for creating life. With less and less new life being born, this world was slowly heading toward destruction. And now, even another world came to steal the mana. Mana used on Earth would not return. Yggdrasia was, quite literally, having its lifeblood drained. The contract I made with the World Tree was one of destruction and rebirth. The human race had built countries around the saplings, stealing mana like blood-sucking parasites. My goal was to destroy the 99 saplings all around the world. And then, with new, strong souls, the World Tree saplings would be reborn. Souls possessing power and purity. I would help my comrades, the 99 secret alpha testers, gain their second lives as the World Tree's new saplings. Their souls had known as much. They still decided to go with me. Once humans lost the saplings, their civilization would crumble. While individual human thoughts might vary, the countries would surely come to prevent me from completing my quest. War was inevitable. War between me and all 99 human countries. And as Earth was planning to lean on this world to solve their energy problems, they would certainly interfere. I would destroy this world's civilization, and I would shut down the meddlings of Earth. I would make enemies out of 2 planets. I looked up at the World Tree, at the new home of my comrades. Here, I swore an oath to myself. I shall become the demon of death, the shatterer of worlds,